I'd like to call the meeting of the Urbana City Council to order, and we will start this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Sammons?
Present.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Jacobson?
Here.
Mr. Madigan?
Here.
Ms. Marlin?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe?
Here.
Mayor Pressing?
Here. First item is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, May 20th, 2013.
So moved.
Motion by Ammons,
I'll second.
seconded by Roberts. Any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Actually, I do have one correction, please.
Okay.
I'm a man, so could we change alderwoman to alderman? Just,
Well, we've talked about different things. There could be alderperson or alder creature.
I'll answer to either, but
Okay.
I'd rather not be alderwoman.
Okay. Okay. That'll be changed.
I'm sure that's a vestige of Heather there, right?
That's right. Okay. We did have a motion, right?
Yes.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? Don't see any additions. So we'll go to petitions and communications. And the first person I have is someone you know, Robert Lewis. Sitting on the other side.
I got some rocks. My name's Robert Lewis, 803 North Gouverneur Urbana, approximately 3 blocks south of the Ellis subdivision. And I was going to ask Phyllis for 20 minutes, but I don't think she's going to give it to me.
No.
Well, I'll keep it brief. I couldn't really stay away, and since I guess I started some of this about before I got off council, about the problems at the Eads subdivision. Unfortunately and fortunately, we went full circle last time. Last time I listened to what the council was talking about. But in going full circle and developing the idea of using number 2 as the impetus for doing this, I wanted to make sure that there's a couple of things that you are aware of and it's not been overlooked. The first one is the fact that when the people of the Ellis subdivision came to us, their concern was having the ability to not necessarily have the funds available, but for the city to take over the infrastructure and for them to be able to handle the financial issues as it came up. I want to make sure that's something we haven't overlooked in terms of increasing it to $6,000 and all that stuff and having it available or whatever. That was one of my concerns. The other concern was if you have made available $6,000 in reimbursables to a household, the anomaly that exists in this particular subdivision is the fact that the city main is running in some of the properties front yard. That, in accordance with your ordinance, is where the T is. If that's the case, then obviously these kinds of issues that are coming up now are long-term, and the people in those properties also have developed their properties. They've had shrubs put up. They have all these things done in their front yard. And the question is, are they eligible for $6,000 as well? Because the person on the south side cannot do it without the person on the north side, okay? So that's a dilemma, okay? The other dilemma is the fact that when we establish property lines, okay, people are selling airspace now. I don't know if you realize that. What's above you and below you is yours. Somewhere down the road, somebody elected to place this in their property line, within their property. That's an issue. And I don't know if the attorney wants to address that, but he could if he wishes. But I think that's a big problem. I know it is in the city when you're putting high-rises up and you're very careful as to where you put that, where you start cutting down when they go down 3 stories, okay? They don't want to go off at an angle and interfere with somebody else's line. So it would be just as appropriate in a small community as it is in a large community. So I want to put that on your mind to make sure that you're aware of that as you move forward. And the last issue is, last time I was listening to the conversation, I know they were talking about the amount of money in the budget for sewer tax. And there are line items in there that are earmarked for future development, okay? And there's nothing wrong with using creative accounting to address that issue for the general populace when you have a problem. Based on my calculations, what could happen in 7 years,
You have 1 minute, Mr. Lewis.
I want 7. No, I'm just kidding. What could happen here is the fact that people are really in a situation where they are being impacted by tax dollars, stuff they put in for many, many years. But there are funds out there for the potential growth and development southeast of Urbana. That pumping station you alluded to in the discussion. Those dollars can be put back, and that's a 20-year development plan. What could happen in this subdivision, if you took and allocated it to it, could happen within everybody, 110 homes in 7 years. I know you wouldn't do that, but that's the potential exists. And the numbers that we use, the 14, and last time I heard was 12, so this escalating, moving back and forth. We need to clarify that and make this process seamless for the people. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, Robert. Any questions for Robert?
I can't resist.
Charlie
I
has a
can't resist
question.
a comment. He spoke for 5 minutes. We never got him to speak that long. We should have made making him sit on that side of the table all these years.
Is that all you got?
Okay, thank you very much. Durrell Cruz.
Hello, I'm Durrell Cruz, 2007 South George Huff Drive, and Phyllis has a statement which I'm going to read. I just want to quickly say I hope I shared some information with you regarding TIFs and the history of TIFs in Urbana, and I'd like to speak briefly to it. I don't think 5 minutes is enough time to speak publicly, and hopefully there'll be a lot more opportunities in the future to be able to talk about TIFs and the effect on our community. The statement I'd like to read is as follows. It is my understanding that there has been minimal public input in City Council discussion regarding the annual continuation or extension of Urbana's 4 TIF districts. As the Urbana City Council meets to plan the city's budget, this discussion is long overdue. The time has come to determine whether TIFs are fulfilling their original purpose, if they are resulting in community-wide benefit, and whether or not local taxing bodies have been negatively impacted by the annual loss of property tax revenue. Although the city meets annually with representatives of local taxing bodies, the process seems relatively perfunctory and the public remains mostly unaware and uninformed of TIF decisions and results. Tonight, this should change. The City Council should begin the process for a comprehensive and open discussion of the future role of TIFs in the city's budgets and plans, and this effort should be carried forward in the upcoming months. Why this discussion is needed. 1, the city created the first TIF district in downtown Urbana 33 years ago. 2, the purpose of TIF districts was to address blight in a designated neighborhood and attempt to correct it. 3, the typical approach taken was to focus primarily on 2 areas of the community: the city infrastructure, improvements, and economic development. 4, with each passing year, tax dollars generated by TIF steadily increased. Where TIF 1, for example, generated $176,827 in 1980, today it generates for the city $614,514. The pot has steadily increased in all TIFs. During TIF, the city has collected a total of $39,807,519 in property taxes from 8 other local taxing bodies. Although sizable dollars, hundreds of thousands, have occasionally been allocated for school and park projects, they have fallen far short of their full tax increment. TIF districts were intended to be temporary and terminate after 23 years. Urbana has never terminated a TIF district, but rather has added 3 and extended those that were to expire. Questions to ask the City Council. Has the City Council and staff ever developed an exit plan to phase out TIF districts? If not, why? If not after 33 years, when do the Council and staff envision initiating this process? Does the City Council believe the general public and representatives from the 8 taxing bodies should have a more direct say in whether the TIF districts should be continued or phased out? And 4, does the City Council believe the use of other taxing bodies' property tax revenue for its own purposes is more needed, more critical, and more legitimate than each of the taxing bodies' own use and need for it? Immediate action is needed by the City Council. The City Council should, 1, terminate TIF 3 at the end of December 2013. 2, place an immediate moratorium on adding any additional short-term or long-term debt to the remaining 3 TIFs. Direct city staff to develop a plan to begin the process of discontinuing the TIF program and recommend city budget adjustments. Begin with the 2014 budget, and each following year, return any TIF monies not now committed to existing projects or debt reduction
You have 1 minute,
to
Mr.
those
Cruz.
existing taxing bodies. In 2014, the economic development programs and incentives funded by discontinue those programs. I'm going to skip here. Terminate all TIF districts as debt payments are completed. For the benefit of the entire community, now is the time for the City Council to begin the process of restoring fairness and balance in the collection and distribution of limited property tax revenue to all Urbana taxing bodies serving our community's many needs. And I think the township meeting before this is a perfect example of that, in that during the life of the TIFs, the city has collected over $1 million that actually was township money. And this past year, they collected over $76,000 from the township and is serving both agencies and listening to the effect of the budget constraints that the township is facing to continue to collect that $76,000, I think needs to be rethought. And I would assume all taxing bodies are experiencing the same discussions that you heard the township give you tonight. And there needs to be a need to look at this issue in more depth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Carol McCusick.
Carol McCusick, 1907 North Cunningham. I wanted to complain about the graphic that went with the presentation for the resolution that's for the capital improvement plan. It was a graphic of the that was at the committee. It was for its first step last week, 2013-05-024R. On Olympian Drive, there was, you know, a map, and it's like you're in the band, in the circular ring around a city, and way over here was this segment that's a dotted line, and way over here was another dotted line. But it was misleading, I think, and you couldn't see the streets, the existing roads that were involved. If you hadn't been following it through the years and you weren't familiar with it, you might not know that, which I wasn't at all, the part that was over to the right-hand side on the graphic that was shown, and this came up, if you look at the slider of that video, it's between 6 minutes and 35 seconds and 9 minutes and 38 seconds. That graphic's up. So come to find out, it's the, for the Urbana part of that, road that may happen because of just state and federal money, it would, Bill said, that's part of that video. I'm only going by that. I haven't been following this issue deeply, but I did to get a ride out to that country, and it's, you know, it's seems like a shame to have another highway. It really does. And so, but what I wanted to bring to people's attention is that it was such a bad graphic, and it shouldn't be. You know, you should be pretty well oriented, and what's that plan is supposed to entail, I understand from the city planner, is that the part, it's not just the dotted line on the right. It is not the only new road that's going to have to happen. A whole to the right of that dotted line, that's actually the western part for Urbana, and to the right of it, there's going to be new road all the way to over to 45. So I have that complaint about that presentation, and also as far as I still think the capital improvement budget, maybe no, the general budget. I asserted that it wasn't online, like either in conjunction with any city council meetings or at the finance page, but I would like some confirmation of that, because I think we need, that would be good to see, and if there was some way to have it, like some presentation of it that simplified things into bigger categories so that you could see it at a glance, you know, that would be good. One of the things to be following is where there's fees in association with the municipal electric aggregation contract. There's supposed to be fees coming to the city. And I think that we should be learning about how the grid works, so we know how to make to have a discussion about whether what we want out of a municipal electric aggregation, and if we
You have 1 minute, Ms. McCusick.
want to be involved in trying to make our grid have less negative impacts, our grid use, if there's ways to do it. But I think you have to understand how it works as a basis, and that it might be within the intent, actually, of that fee money to do things that are education. Thank you.
Thank you. Rex Bradfield.
Good evening. I'm Rex Bradfield, 2101 Pond Street in Urbana, Illinois. I want to speak to you briefly about the sanitary sewer issue. I wanted to start out by just reminding the council of a couple of things that I mentioned in my previous presentation to you about service connections and about some of the things that are in your ordinances. Your ordinances define a service connection as a connection to any required utility for purposes of serving individual land uses or structures within a development. Service connections are distinguishable from a mainline utility in that while they connect to a main line, the service line connection terminates or is intended to terminate at a specific lot or land use. You also have in your ordinances where there are references to service connection Ys or Ts. Clearly, the service connection, even farther, as I discussed before in your ordinances, says to the lot line. And that's in the engineering part of it, where it says these service connections are to the lot line. In the rear, as I said, they're already there, and that is the Y or the T. In the front, as we've been talking about, that's to the property line, and that's by your own ordinances. I've been trying to find in the ordinances where it says lateral connection, and I can't find the definition in there, but it's very clear what a service connection is. I've read over what the memorandum was and what the proposed ordinances is, and I'm like Mr. Lewis. It looks to me like we're back to square one, different numbers, but there are a couple of things on here which I absolutely do not support. The first thing is we're now talking about $6,000, and it's one time for any sanitary service lateral. Once again, if the lateral is from the building to the service Y, how does the property owner know whether that's been used up? Is there going to be a record of this? I mean, if you're going to buy a house and you're going to pay $300,000 for a house, and the one $12,000 connection has been used up, and 15 years later you just go under a $300,000 mortgage, and all of a sudden the line goes bad and the problem's out in the city right away, and the city says it's already been used up. How are people protected? How do you know that? I mean, the title companies are not going to know that unless it becomes some record somewhere. But the second thing is the one that scares me the most is the city's reimbursement obligation shall cease immediately and without requirement of further payment if in any fiscal year the city council fails to appropriate or otherwise make available funds for reimbursement. Well, that's encouraging. What's to keep the city from saying, gosh, we're a little short on money, so we're just not going to pay these people. Sorry you're out to $12,000. I know it puts you in a bind, but gosh, that's tough. I'd like to see this tabled and we go back to where we were in March, and there were some really productive things going on. This is back to square one, only we're talking $6,000 rather than $4,500. Where did we go? I mean, what did we accomplish in 3 months? So I don't support this as it comes out, and I know there's many that are saying that I heard that some had discussed that my definition of a service connection was not true and it meant all the way to the Y. It's in your own ordinance. It's not something I made up. I used the ordinances. As an engineer, that's what we have to do, is live with the ordinances. It's time we started living with it, understand that that's yours. Very quickly, a subdivision goes through this process. It's built, and it's approved by the city engineer as being built and accepted. That kicks into the maintenance bond, and for 1 year, anything that happens to that is part of the construction operations means that the maintenance bond pays for it. At that time, the maintenance bond, if it goes and nothing happens, the maintenance bond is expired. The city accepts all improvements as constructed and accepts all responsibilities for it, and there are documents that the owner and the city sign. If a sewer lateral goes south after that, there is no property owner. There's no houses on the lot or anything if they haven't bought, and one of those sewer lines goes south, who repairs it? The city repairs it. It's your line then. And if you say, well, once somebody buys it, it's their line, show me the document that gives that line to people so they know what they're buying. Show me that they want to buy that line that's 4-foot pipe sections rather than a 20-foot solvent well pipe that won't be subject to roots. It's not in the ordinance. There's no transfer from the time you got it
Your time
till
is
now.
up, Mr.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Reverend Troy A. Burks.
Reverend Troy A. Burks, 1102 North Gregory Street, Urbana. To the mayor and to the council, tonight I have two things I would like to discuss. One is the resolution approving the 2013 update of the capital improvement plan for the city of Urbana. I haven't been privy to see the capital improvement plan, but I would ask that monies will be designated for urban renewal in regards to the city. And as I stated, I have not been privy to review the plan, so I would hope that that's in the plan. And secondly, I'm here to support the resolution in regard to hospitals paying their fair taxes in the city of Urbana. And I want to thank the mayor for her strategic planning in regards to that, because I believe, as any honest tax-paying person that lives in the city of Urbana pay their taxes, that the hospital should abide by those same rules. They should not use loopholes or any information that would hinder them from paying their fair way. So I'm grateful for this council. I love the city of Urbana, and I look forward to us doing bigger and better things in the year of 2013. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood would like to speak about the sewer laterals at the time it's on the agenda. And Bishop King James Underwood is for option number 3, but does not wish to speak at this time. Is there anyone else who wants to address the Urbana City Council? Oh, you want to talk right now? Okay.
Oh, you said at the time, yes.
Yeah,
at the
right.
Time, yes.
Okay, we'll move on then. Unfinished business. We traditionally never finish our unfinished business, right? I don't think we have any on the agenda right now.
Eternal business.
Right. Okay, reports of standing committees, the Committee of the Whole. That was Eric Jacobson?
Yes, it was. And so, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I would like to bring to the council a motion to approve central business street name sign replacement as designated in your agenda, black lettering with white background, 6-inch capital letter font, and 4.5-inch small letter font. Bring to the council with a recommendation on behalf of the Committee of the Whole with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, motion by Eric Jacobson, seconded by Charlie Smythe. Any discussion?
One.
Yes.
Okay, I had some feedback from a couple individuals who just sort of wondered why this why we're involved in such like a very particular signage regimentation, and they felt that it left out, or it prohibited communities from expressing personal style or just personal expression by making everything codified across the United States. And they didn't see why having arched tops on the panels for the street signs really prohibited people from finding the streets. So I'm just saying that it looks like there's reasons that the codification and the standardization is useful, but we're also becoming we're becoming less and less flexible and more rigid about like the smallest details of life. And this is a trend I don't think is really necessary in America. So I'm just getting feedback about the fact that we're Nazifying almost the approach to life by this minute regulation. And I guess if we want to go this route, I guess we have to, but I don't understand why we have to. And it doesn't really please me. I guess I would like to just make that comment.
Okay. Eric.
So on both aesthetic and well, on aesthetic grounds and on sort of grounds of what a pain in the neck bureaucrats sometimes are, I agree with Dennis. I just wanted to ask, is there anything in the ordinance that would prohibit neighbors from, like, hanging flower pots on the signposts, or in some way adding something distinctive to the stanchions that hold the signs up, should they choose? Not vandalizing the signs themselves, of course, but
Bill Gray, Director of Public Works.
Basically, the Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the manual, is pretty explicit and clear about how signs, shapes, colors, fonts, etc. should be. And it's all for the motoring public, bicyclists, pedestrians, whomever that use these signs. You want to send a clear message, consistent message, whether you're in California, New York, or Urbana. And that's the main, for continuity, consistency, and lack of any confusion out there. So to add flowers or to put a candy stripe along the pole or whatever, if it's not in the manual, the answer is no, we should not do that. So we can add flowers, we can do other things in the right of way if we so choose, but just don't affix it to the sign. And we do have flowers, in fact, downtown.
Okay, anyone else? Bill?
Last week we talked a little bit about why we would have to do this because of IDOT funding. We might lose IDOT funding if we didn't conform. So I'm not clear if we would only lose IDOT funding for those roads where we change the signs. So if there are entire neighborhoods where we don't typically get IDOT funding, then would we lose funding from those for those streets if we didn't conform?
The overwhelming reason not to do it is for consistency's sake with the MUTCD, period. Yes, it's true that if you have federal or state funding, you have to meet those standards. But if it was strictly city, local dollars, and if Mr. Simon wants to add to this comment, yeah, we want to be consistent. We don't want to put ourselves in potential, litigious, liable situation. If we don't care about liability, then we can make the signs any color or shape we want. And that wouldn't be my recommendation. We could just snub the MUTCD and do whatever we want, but that wouldn't be my recommendation.
Could I turn the chair over to Charlie momentarily?
Sure.
I know that when the People's Republic of China got started, there was some discussion about having red be go and green be stop, because they really like the color red. I think they fortunately decided to go with the rest of the world, and there are certain things that you do want to be uniform because you have drivers coming into a new situation and they're going to have to learn an awful lot of stuff. Like if you don't have the red light be on the top, you had it on the bottom, that's going to create a certain amount of confusion. So there are other ways to be creative, I think. I don't think Urbana's going to lose its creativity by having standard street signs, but there's welcoming signs to the neighborhood, like historic East Urbana neighborhood, and I think that can get the job done. Thank you.
Anyone else? Michael?
Bill, I asked a question last week about the funding source. Is this coming out of your existing budget then? Yes. Okay, so it's not new money, there's not... No, we have, in our line item, there's a sign replacement fund. Okay, and this is just coming out of the existing? $70,000, and it's part of that fund. Okay. Yes. Thanks.
Anyone else? So you have a motion and a second? Or did you get a second? Yeah, okay, Charlie. All right, I suppose we could have roll call. Would you like a roll call on this one, Dennis?
I don't have a preference. I don't have a preference.
Well, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. Eric.
Okay, next, from the Committee of the Whole, ordinance number 2013-05-046, An ordinance amending Schedule F of Section 23-82 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code, designating one-way streets and alleys, specifically Walnut Street, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole. We recommend approval.
Second.
Okay, motion by Eric Jacobson, seconded by Carol Ammons. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries. Eric?
On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, ordinance number 2013-05-047, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a non-exclusive utility license agreement for Green Street at Goodwin Avenue. Behalf of the committee, I move approval.
Motion by Jacobson, seconded by Smythe. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Ordinance number 2013-05-048, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance fiscal year 2012-2013, Urbana Bicycle Master Plan update. On behalf of the committee, I move approval.
Motion by Jacobson, seconded by Smythe. Any discussion? Carol?
We talked about this at Committee of the Whole. This request of this ordinance is basically to appropriate about $36,000. Is that right? $38,000 to review the 5-year annual bike plan. I am still not in support of that budget transaction. I believe that at this point, there are so many other things that we can do with the $38,000 that we're being forced to look at. And I just don't think it's a good time for us to expend the money, and I think the review can be done by other means, so I won't support it.
Charlie?
And I would disagree with that, because I think the Bicycle Master Plan, as we had it, has demonstrated its impact in a positive fashion. As Bill said last week, we probably leveraged it for $1 million in funding for various transportation type improvements all over the city, and so I would urge approval.
Anyone else? Eric?
Yeah, in addition to what Charlie said about the leveraging effect, this is a little bit less tangible, but it's certainly testified to by communities all around the country, is that as communities become more bicycle friendly, they do become more attractive. Real estate agents have the opinion that property values increase. So I think that an appropriate level of planning, an appropriate expenditure for planning in this area is justified.
Mike?
Remind me, isn't there a study involved in this appropriation?
Yes, the study is the master plan update, yes.
But I mean, that's all it is just to fund this study, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, then I'm going to support it because I think there does need to be a study of just how many people are using these hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of asphalt that we are not only spending local dollars, but yes, we are leveraging federal dollars, but we're all federal taxpayers too. So I think the study is important because it may shed some light on whether or not widening as many streets as we are widening for this purpose is worthwhile.
Dennis?
Yeah, and I've always been curious to find out where the bike owners who use the facilities live. And I'm real interested in at one point I had this conversation about registering bikes, and bike proponents felt that it was like too it was too much of an imposition to have the bike owners register. But I think that, when I was talking about licensing bicycles, so maybe that's not practical, but I think if we found out from the surveys or the study not only where these trips originate as far as like the bike owners and where they live in town, and we could do a GIS mapping of that, and also where their destinations are. I'd be really curious to see that.
Bill?
Yeah, I think that was actually part of an earlier, when they did the 5-year plan, they did something similar, but not as comprehensive as probably you're hoping. And I would hope something like that would happen too. I just also wanted to mention that part of the planning process is to determine whether it's right or wrong to have a path on a street, and the main consideration is safety. So I think it's important to go through this because opinions about whether that's more safe or not are always changing, and our own bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee can't necessarily agree on that at any time. So that is another reason to have an outside agency like RPC do the study and not try to do it internally. They have access to a lot of different studies, and as knowledge evolves on how bicycles interact with traffic and what's more safe, it's a learning process, and I think this is important to continue. Oh, and the other part of the next step, the silver level bicycle-friendly community, is education, and that's something that probably needs to be emphasized more. So part of this study will probably look at ways to educate both the bicycle drivers and car drivers to how to react to bicycle lanes and how to interact with each other.
Anyone else? Carol.
I just want to do one quick follow-up. I don't know if any of what's been said here is actually scope of the study. That's the first thing. But secondly, I'm not in opposition because of his bike study or biking or bike paths. I'm in opposition because I believe that what's being expended at this time should not be expended. And I believe that the study can be done because we could actually have a scope of study to see the number of low-income residents who are biking and how to get that up. The scope of study could be all kinds of things, but I don't know if what we're asking of the RPC under the scope of study is actually going to be covered, and your answers will be answered at the end of the day. And I think that's the point. So.
Okay.
Dennis.
Well, all right. So, Bill, do we have any? I guess I haven't seen what the survey looks like. Is it still in construction, or are we still drafting it? And can the questions and concerns of council be included in this as part of the study?
The scope does talk about a survey. The scope will rate bicycle level of streets and facilities. There will be 5 years of additional education knowledge in this emerging design field of bicycle facilities, and it is emerging. In fact, I'm on a IDOT committee that's looking at Chapter 42 of their standards, which is the ways and means of building bicycle facilities. So this is really, in the last 10 years or so, kind of a new area, an emerging area from prior to that. So the RPC staff is excellent. They are very much on top of their game with respect to knowing the latest technology trends and ways of doing things. A tool we have today that we didn't have 6 years ago when the first study was done is we have literally a camera that we could put out at a location, and it can count peds and bikes and trucks and cars and whatever, and download that information, and we know when it happened, how many happened within what period of time, et cetera, et cetera. So there's tools available that's much less costly than having bodies out at a site, pay them 8 hours at work or whatever at location. So yes, there's survey work done. I can't answer how in-depth OD, origin destination, will be done. I think it'll be whether or not those questions are answered in a survey versus us stopping bicyclists and saying, where are you coming from, where are you going? Okay, it'll be more survey related versus labor intensive. But a lot of these things that you are bringing up tonight, yeah, we'll have answers to. Okay, so it is part of the scope. It's part of the scope.
So can I respond?
Yes.
Okay, because we're having a conversation, I feel. All right, so I appreciate that, but and I think one of Carol's concerns is that if this survey ends up being just a physical, brick and mortar and paint study, and it doesn't include some of the socio-economic questions that the council's interested in answering, as far as use and source of rides and things like that, and the kinds of users that are on the bikes and on the paths, it's not going to have as much veracity as far as its value will be diminished. And I think that if we can add these questions to the survey, and if we're not forced to use a predetermined survey, but we can create our own survey, I'd like to see some of these questions included.
Okay.
Well, okay. Then what we probably need to do is probably in a committee meeting, I'll bring in representatives from the consultant, okay, and make sure that they clearly understand the level of detail and survey you want, because although there's survey information that will be gathered, I think I'm hearing a lot more details than what you're going to be provided. And if you want more details, then we need to communicate that to them directly, and it's going to represent a change of scope then, I'm afraid. I don't think the level that they have, and getting back to Ms. Hammond's question, there may be expectations here than what is going to be delivered in this scope. So I'm afraid, so you all are clear, I'm probably going to have them in so they understand, and that the fee that they're charging is in fact what we want to pay. Because it sounds like we're wanting a lot more in-depth information here. So I want to be sure. I don't want you to pass something that you're thinking we're going to deliver this, but yet we're going to deliver that. So I see a shaking head in the audience. So I think I would recommend that you not pass this tonight then, because we need clarification on the level of survey information.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion to defer it?
Yeah.
Or is that
Well,
incorrect?
we need to, no, we need to move to send this to committee.
Keep it, send it back to committee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
we need a motion to send it back to committee, right?
Right.
I move to send this back to committee.
And I'll second.
Okay, motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts to send this issue back to committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion carries. All right, next,
Yeah, right. Resolution number.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Resolution number 2013-05-024R. A resolution approving the 2013 update of the capital improvement plan for the city of Urbana. On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I move approval.
Second.
Okay, motion by Jacobson, seconded by Smythe. Any discussion?
I just want to speak to the
Carol.
resolution. I just want to speak to the resolution briefly, just from the question in the public participation. The capital improvement plan, which does include all of the improvement in all the areas of Urbana, and I think it does include Reverend Burke's, your question about urban renewal areas. And if you go to the website and look at the packet, it has the entire city broken down with lighting improvements and all the other areas of the city. So I support the resolution as it stands today.
Anyone else? We have a motion by Jacobson, seconded by Smythe. Is that correct? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries. Eric?
Oops. Lost. Let another page come up here. Resolution number 2013-05-025R. A resolution in support of hospitals paying their fair share.
Second.
Now, yeah, and I think, the wording now isn't the exact wording I think that we voted on, but it's certainly the sense of it. So
You don't think it's the exact?
Or maybe it is. Is it the
I
exact
think it
wording
is.
as we
I
have?
Yeah.
second this as written.
Okay. On behalf of the committee, I move that, I move approval.
Okay, that was motion by Jacobson, seconded by Marlin. Mr. Madigan.
Upon advice of counsel, since my wife works for Health Alliance, I've been advised to recuse myself. I'm going to do that this time. But I think I'm going to review my options, as this could be this could make me recuse myself from all kinds of things having to do with hospitals or any of these issues. I mean, this is not just a Carl issue. It's a larger issue than that, but I will recuse myself this time.
Okay. Okay, any discussion? Eric?
I thought I remembered last time that we were going to insert wording with the bill number that's in the House, which
It
is.
is in there.
Is it there?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I missed it.
Do you have the updated version or not?
I thought I was looking at the updated.
It's at the
version.
very end. Let's see if I can give it to you. Here we go. Here it is. Here it is. It's right there.
Yes, okay. Okay, apologies for my attention deficit disorder.
Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Hammonds?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries. Reports of special committees, I don't believe we have any. Reports of officers. Tom Carino, Economic Development.
Good evening. Everyone should have received an electronic copy of this month's Economic Development Report. Just to highlight a few items, there was a property transaction for 216 and 218 West Main Street, known as the Stevens Building, that is under new ownership, and there is some discussion about a potential mixed-use renovation of that property, so that's very exciting, as that property has been underutilized for many years. There's also, just a few doors down from that, a new lounge and nightclub opening at the former V. Picasso space. Related to the Cake Design Development Agreement that Council approved, there's a lot of activity there. Again, 206, 208, and 210 West Main. Tenants include Pizza M, Urbana Land Arts, Norden, Flying Coffee Machine, so a lot of exciting tenants in that space. There are plans for a new restaurant at the former Black Rock Pizza space, so another exciting new restaurant in downtown. Also, the owner of Mirabelle has leased some space at the former Morning Cup space, which is in the Stratford mixed-use development, and that is going to be a new restaurant concept, so yet another exciting new restaurant concept in downtown. And then also, we are working with Josh Boyd, who is looking to open a small-scale butcher shop in downtown. And what's interesting is both Josh Lucas with Flying Coffee Machine and Josh Boyd are using a new fundraising tool called Indiegogo, and that is an opportunity for people to contribute to their concept and help them get startup money. So both of those are going forward well with their campaigns. Just a few more items quickly. We are working with a franchisee for a new Wendy's restaurant at Gateway Shops. We're also working with the owner of a new ice cream shop called El Oasis, and that'll be at the Smoothie King space at 5 Points Commerce Center. Related to Market at the Square, we are in full swing. The market did receive a Link Up Illinois grant. That is an opportunity for folks to double the value of their Link purchases through a grant arrangement, so that's a great addition. We've had that program for a couple years, and we've been funded again. Sprouts at the Market, we've actually had 2 events now, one on May 4th and one this past weekend. And so that's been great related to the market. We've also had the first market, Art at the Market workshop on May 11th, and then we also had the performance at the market. So that is going well, that partnership between the Public Arts Program and the Market at the Square. And then finally, I want to bring attention to a new effort. It is an effort to share why you love Urbana, and that is a partnership between the City of Urbana, the Urbana Business Association, the Urbana Free Library, the Park District, School District, the Economic Development Corporation, 40 North, UPTV, and the Urbana Arts Program, and the Urbana's Market at the Square, and the CUMTD are all partnering. You can go on Facebook or Twitter, and you can share why you love Urbana. And then at the end of the effort, we will put together some marketing and promotion tools and share why people love Urbana so much. So that was organized by Natalie Kenny Marquez in partnership with all those organizations. So that's a great effort. And with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Dennis.
Great news about economic development, and the really interesting thing to me is that we're seeing finally some real action taking place on the 200 West block of Main Street on the north side. Those buildings have been underutilized for quite a few years, sometimes 10 years or more, and I think that we have people who've moved into them and acquired them, although I don't know the details about the V. Picasso site, who will understand and employ sensitivity in the development of those properties. And I want to just point out to the general public and actually to the City Council that both the Stevens Building, which just has new ownership under Norman Baxley and his partner, and the V. Picasso Building, these are both buildings that are designed by Joseph W. Royer. And the Stevens Building in particular, although we don't have, Brian Adams has done extensive research on the ownership of the original construction of that building. He was able to find all kinds of information about its construction, but the newspapers of the time never actually said that it was designed by Royer, but it has every earmark of his architectural finesse. And when it was built, he occupied the top floor. His offices and his residence were in the top floor of that building. I can't believe he didn't have a hand in building it. So not only is it wonderful to hear that the new owner, who is obviously sensitive to historic properties, has acquired it, and it's finally being put to some great use, but that I would hope that in the future there would be a consideration for making that a local landmark building, at least have a conversation about that. The interesting thing about the V. Picasso Building is that this was the original building that was designed by Royer, and it was the home of the Knights of Pythias. And but when we were doing the brochure work for the Royer District, we were kind of misinformed because the Knights of Pythias sign is on a different building. It's actually next door. And it was only by a chance conversation with Tom Bruno, who happens to be, and I didn't realize this, but he's the Chancellor Commander of the Pythian Lodge. He gave me a tour of the building upstairs, and he said, you know, the interesting thing was that back when the lodges combined, they swapped buildings. So there was actually some kind of real estate swap that took place. And so I went back, I said, well, every time I look at the V. Picasso, I think, this building is beautiful. It looks like a Royer building. It's got finesse. And the building next to it, a little bit more plain. It doesn't look like a Royer building to me. So it turns out that I was right. And then, you know, how you can be blind. It turns out that if you look at the top story of the V. Picasso Building, it says K73P, KP, Knights of Pythias, 1873. So it's right there in front of us. We didn't realize it. So I'm hoping that my recommendation to the new owners would be to consider the heritage of that building and evaluate whether it might be smart to take down the giant canopy that's in front of the building, which hides the edifice to a large extent. That's just a consideration that they might want to look at. Interestingly enough, one of the historic photographs of the turn of the century shows the Flatiron Building, and it's a well-known picture in the archives. And it shows also that the building that was the 214 West Main Street housed a Lou McWilliams millinery shop, and a canopy on the front of her store has millinery across the top and her name across the border. She was the most renowned millinist in the two cities, Champaign-Urbana, and many people came from Champaign to shop in her store. She eventually moved her store to Champaign, but it was here in Urbana for many years, and her home, which is at 607 East Elm Street, and is today a Presbyterian Church resale shop, was also designed by Royer, and it was a Royer residence. And it's still in good shape and it has its original cladding on it. So I think that these are, from the historic point of view, this is really important that these buildings are being put to new uses, and I'm just hoping that they would be done so with consideration. And we may want to consider marking the buildings in some manner so that people, when they come to town, have this awareness.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom? Charlie.
Yeah, Tom, I keep meaning to ask you this, and I was reminded again when I drove past it today. There's an empty gas station on North Lincoln, small, barricaded up. Nothing's happened for over a year since they gutted it. I sort of at the time assumed they were going to remodel it or something. Do you have any knowledge of what's going on and what's going to happen?
It's a former mobile station. It's leased but not owned by TriStar Marketing, and my understanding is they still have an active lease. They're just not actively using the building, and so the space is being leased but just not actively used. And I can check in. Actually, Brandon Boyes has had contact with both definitely with the business owner, and I'm not sure about the property owner, but we could try to get some information and see what, if anything's going on there.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other reports of officers? Okay. Diane.
I just had an announcement. I wanted to let people know that on Saturday, June 8th, there's going to be a performance by the Urbana Pops Orchestra, and this is our homegrown orchestra, and it's supported in part by an Urbana Public Arts grant. Also, it's affiliated with the Urbana Park District and the Urbana School District. But this will be a performance in the newly renovated auditorium at Urbana High School. Its theme is space-related music, and it's informally known as the Star Wars Concert, because as a special feature of this concert, there will be professional people in Star Wars costumes at the concert and available for photo opportunities. So this will be a really great family-friendly concert, and anybody who's a Star Wars fan will need to be here. So just wanted to let you know, Saturday, June 8th at 7 o'clock at Urbana High School.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to new business. The first is resolution number 2013-06-026R, a resolution of protest against a proposed text amendment to the Champaign County zoning ordinance. And we have Robert Myers to explain how we do this convoluted action.
Right. I know you have a full agenda tonight, so I'm going to try to keep it brief, but if you need further explanation, let me know. In essence, this is a county zoning ordinance text amendment where the county is proposing to change their rules for how they conduct their zoning and issue permits. And in this case, there's an intergovernmental disagreement between the Sangamon County Public Water District, which is a public body, and the Village of Mahomet, and it concerns expansion of a water treatment facility that's outside of the Village of Mahomet. But in this case, because of this disagreement, the county believes that the water district customers are being left at a disadvantage because they're not able to take advantage of needed expansion for the water treatment plant for both drinking water and for firefighting purposes. So I think the county feels like this is an extraordinary case where they would like to decouple the county's special use permits that they've already approved for the expansion of the plant from the Village of Mahomet having to also approve their subdivision approvals, such that the county zoning administrator could go ahead and issue the special use permit for the water treatment plant. That's already been issued by the county board. The county board has voted 27 in favor and 0 against in favor of the water treatment plant. But according to the county's rules, they can't issue that permit unless the Village of Mahomet says that doing so would be in compliance with their subdivision ordinance. And the Village of Mahomet says they're not going to approve the subdivision for the property unless the water treatment plant agrees to annex into the Village of Mahomet. So in essence, what's happening is it's an intergovernmental disagreement between these two different bodies. In city staff's opinion, the county has now changed the proposed wording such that it doesn't involve Urbana or Urbana's extraterritorial jurisdiction whatsoever. It would never apply to home rule municipalities like Urbana or Champaign, and it can only apply to non-home rule communities such as Mahomet. So in city staff's view, it's an interesting disagreement, but we're not a party to it, and we couldn't be. So it's not really our fight, so to speak. The Plan Commission met on May 23rd, and although there was not a quorum present, the 4 members there had some concerns, and their concern was that this seems to be an erosion of municipal subdivision authority. Generally, they feel that the City of Urbana should be concerned about the county erosion of municipal subdivision authority, generally speaking. Even though this doesn't directly affect Urbana, Plan Commission was thinking more broadly in that today it's Mahomet, but potentially tomorrow or some year it could be Urbana in the same boat. And we like to make sure that the City of Urbana kind of stands up for municipal subdivision interests in the county, generally speaking. But on the other hand, it doesn't directly, this zoning ordinance text amendment does not affect the city in any direct way. So you actually have a different views or different thinking on it. City staff is recommending that the Urbana City Council not protest this because it doesn't really involve the city or its interests. The Plan Commission feels like that, although it doesn't directly involve us, that in the big picture that it could affect us. And their thinking is that a resolution would be advisable, a resolution protest.
Diane.
Just a couple of questions. If we were to adopt the resolution of protest, or if any municipality did for that matter, then it would go to the county board and they'd have to approve the text amendment by a 3/4 majority instead of a simple majority.
Right.
Is that that's basically the only
That's true.
fallout from this. And the second question is, has this sort of kind of like spot text amendment ever been done before, to your knowledge?
Occasionally, zoning ordinance amendments in the county are very specific. And there's been a number of cases that have come before you where some specific instance, for instance, has instigated a very specific zoning ordinance text change. Like recently, one came before you about contractors, facilities in certain zoning districts and things like that. And this is kind of a pattern of the county zoning changes with the county. So in that regard, I'd say that it's not totally out of character with what the county, how they carry out their business in terms of zoning changes. But again, this only affects one potential property. There's only one rural water district in the county, period. And this is the only non-home rule community that the rural water district is in, so it's the only one that it could ever affect that we know of.
Dennis?
If we weren't involved, wouldn't the differences between Sangamon Valley Public Water and the City of Mahomet be settled in a court situation or someplace else?
Well, it's not going to get solved by the city of Urbana.
That's right.
It's going to have to be resolved between the Village of Mahomet and the Rural Water District.
Probably in
that's
a court
number
suit?
one.
Or by negotiation?
Either negotiation or potentially a lawsuit, I suppose.
And we don't have a spokesperson for the City of Mahomet that's contributed any conversation to us.
Well, I've spoken to the planner for the Village of Mahomet, and I understand their viewpoint. They have a legitimate interest in this as well, I feel, because I'll give you an example. The City of Urbana has a hook for having to do with sewer and annexation. If someone wants sewer service from the sewer district, they either have to agree to annex into the City of Urbana or sign an annexation agreement agreeing to annex into the City of Urbana. Mm-hmm. Well, Village of Mahomet doesn't have that because they have on their borders, they have this public water district that not only provides water but sewer service out in the rural county area. So with this provision of rural sewer, you could have subdivisions built beyond your borders totally blocking your growth and development. And so that really affects the future of your community. And so their hook is not sewer so much. Their hook is that when they approve subdivisions out in the county, they require that they put a provision in their owner certificate saying that once the city or the Village of Mahomet reaches their borders, that property owner agrees to annex. And that's how they ensure that development out beyond their cities doesn't block them. Mm-hmm. So that's their interest in, that's their normal way of their practice. Mm-hmm. But the water district feels like that if we annex in the city, we're going to be forced to merge with the city's water district and sewer district, and we don't want to do that. That's going to put us out of business. That's their thinking.
And I just because I don't see why we're involved at all. And it would seem to me that we should just table this indefinitely and just not be in the conversation.
Just a point of clarification, did you say the county board voted on this already?
They voted for a special use permit to approve the permits for the expansion of the water treatment plant.
And
actually,
what was the vote, did you say?
Vote was, I understand it, 27 in favor and 0 against.
It would probably be 22? Or did this happen under the old board?
I heard that happened under the old board, so it was.
Okay.
So I think it would be 27.
There's probably very little chance that they wouldn't get 3/4 anyway.
That's what we're thinking. So that's why one of the reasons city staff wanted to work with the county zoning administrator to try to limit the wording so that it will only pertain to non-home rule communities. And then that way there would be no question that it would not affect us. We thought at least we could try to make it
So
better.
what happens if we don't vote on it at all?
If we don't vote on it at all, then there would be no protest that would be filed. And so they would just carry on. They would rely on other bodies to see if they want to protest. Now, we know the Village of Mahomet's already going to protest. The city of Champaign, their city staff has recommended in favor of protests to their plan commission, but they're not reviewing that until this Wednesday night, I believe.
Bill?
So if Mahomet's protesting, then they're already going to need a supermajority on the county board.
Right.
So I guess we would be voting. I'm willing to support the Plan Commission's recommendation to protest, and I think we would be voting to maybe send a message to our county board representatives how we might think they should vote, but then we also have the protections offered by the city staff. And I think those are important because it probably will pass, so at least we're somewhat protected there. And I think one of the main reasons I'm willing to support the resolution of protest is that it allows the county to ignore. It says it doesn't that the subdivision requirements wouldn't have to be in perfect compliance with the technical platting requirements. So, if we were to come up with an ordinance that required annexation under some conditions, then by allowing this, we'd be setting a precedent saying that the county board can say, well, we agree with most of that except not this part, so we're going to ignore that part. And I think that'd be a bad precedent, so I'm going to support the resolution of protest.
Eric?
I will not support the resolution of protest unless I'm convinced by some subsequent arguments. But as I understand it, our legal situation is completely different from Mahomet's. That is, a precedent for Mahomet would not apply to us as a home rule city. And, well, let me ask a question, however. If we did join in a resolution of protest, would there be a follow-up that would involve staff time?
We would, if a resolution of protest was adopted, we would need to file something with the city clerk, and then the city clerk would need to file something with the county zoning administrator, and then the county clerk, or with the county county attorney's office, state attorney general's office.
Libby wants to say something.
Yeah, I attended the first Plan Commission meeting that was held on the item, where we did have testimony from the Sangamon Valley Water District, and learn more about the project that is being proposed and has is actually ready to go out to bid. It has an IEPA low-interest loan set up, and so we learned about some of the public health, safety, and welfare aspects to the project that's being held up, and that's why in the language that you see here, there's reference to that, because we asked the county staff to include that proviso. So one reason the staff has recommended no protest is we feel that the health and safety aspects of this necessary water treatment expansion is sufficient to override some of the more jurisdictional matters that might be raised under ordinary circumstances. And then on top of that, we ask that it be limited to only apply to non-home rule municipalities. And on top of that, we ask that it be limited just to water treatment, not sanitary sewer, and that it just be limited to the permit that's in question. So they've already received a zoning change. I guess they've already received a special use permit, so it's just the use permit that's usually done as a last step by the zoning administrator that they still need to obtain. In terms of Plan Commission, they did have a variety of concerns at the meeting, but they did not take a vote, and they understood that the staff was negotiating in good faith for improvements to the language to hold our concerns, to minimize our concerns or hold them harmless. And they gave us some direction in the meeting that I attended with the Plan Commission. So they understood that we were trying to improve the language. County staff did essentially take all the suggested changes that we made, as well as those suggested by the Plan Commission. The second meeting that Robert attended, there was no quorum, no vote taken. I don't know if they continued to have a variety of opinions at that meeting or how many were absent, but that's why it's here before you tonight with a staff recommendation, and without a Plan Commission recommendation. We wanted to give you the opportunity to decide on this before the county's final decision.
Carol.
I would ask the council to not protest this text amendment request from the county. When we took the vote, I was on the board, and I agree with Libby. Some of the small communities in the county, if we don't allow for the expansion, then the sanitary Sangamon Valley District won't be able to provide the level of service to those areas that we benefit from in Urbana. And I understand Mahomet's concern about annexation, but I don't think it overrides the need of the public safety need on the water in those rural communities. And so I would not support the protest. I would support the text amendment change at this point.
Dennis?
If the city of Mohammed is likely to protest it, or at least have that kind of a vote that would affect the counties, wouldn't it seem to be the appropriate body to make that statement rather than the city of Urbana?
Diane?
Well, this is a really tough one, but in reading through everything, and especially the minutes from the second Plan Commission meeting, I think I'm going to agree with the commissioners there. Even though they didn't take a vote, their sentiment was in support of adopting a resolution of protest. I think there are some jurisdictional concerns, and it does kind of it does undermine the municipal jurisdiction in the ETJ, and I just think it sets a troubling precedent. So I'm going to support adoption of the resolution of protest.
We don't have a motion yet, right? Charlie?
Yeah, we've got two issues here. You've got existing customers that should be served better, but at the same time, what strikes me is that by having this rural district, sanitation and water district, we're also encouraging sprawl. A subdivision can pop up anywhere that they can get served from this, as opposed to, sort of careful, orderly growth, natural growth out of a community. So, I'm really weighing this and am totally conflicted about which way to go on it, because I can see both sides of the situation. And I think we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. It's really not an easy decision. It's and part of that, I think, is and I guess I'm leaning towards a situation where I'm opposed to just random growth in the county, taking farmland and stuff. So I think that suggests that we need to protest this.
I hate to ask this, but does this involve sewer laterals? Just kidding.
Yeah.
Dennis?
Well, I'll make a motion just to see how this goes, to not really be involved at all and just to table this indefinitely. And basically, that would say that we're not going to deal with this. That this is not our question or our battle, and we're not the best advised to second guess to a municipality that's not ourselves, and a water system server that we don't get benefit from.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second the motion to table.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling this, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Aye.
Well, I think the noes have it on that one. Want to have a show of hands?
I think it was a nose.
It was the
You had
nose?
3 ayes and 4 noes.
Okay, well, all right. Okay, is there another motion?
I move resolution number 2013-06-026R, a resolution of protest against a proposed text amendment to the Champaign County zoning ordinance.
So, wait,
You want to protest it, or do you want people to vote no on this?
Oh, I want them to vote no, but of course you got to move the resolution as it's written,
Sometimes
which is questionable.
sometimes we change it. Okay.
Can you change it? Can you change this resolution,
She can make a
Attorney?
motion to defeat the resolution, correct?
Okay, thank you. I'll correct that. And restate move to defeat resolution number 2013-06-026R.
Second.
Okay, motion by Carol Ammons, seconded by Eric Jacobson. Any other discussion? Would the clerk please? Whoops,
Madam
sorry.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
A little slow to switch there. I just want to be clear. So a vote in favor of defeating the protest
Means we won't block the protest.
Okay.
It is a double negative. That's very hard for us to come to grips with sometimes. Okay, anyone else on this? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
No.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
No.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
No.
Okay, so how did that go? I lost track.
The resolution was defeated.
4 ayes and 3 noes.
Four
yes.
ayes and three
And 3
nays means the motion carried.
Yes, it
Yes,
does.
the
Okay,
motion to
the motion to
defeat
defeat
carries.
carried. Okay, we will move on. Ordinance number 2013-06-050, the ever-popular ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 24, Section 24-49, reimbursement for sanitary sewer repairs. And we have
Public participation.
one person that would like to speak to this from the public. Yeah,
Okay.
might as well. Do you want to speak first? Reverend Dr. Evelyn B. Underwood.
I'm Reverend Dr. Evelyn B. Underwood, 1309 West Tremont Street, Urbana. My question is, wasn't 2 and 3 a part of the committee as a whole? I know we were here late after 11 o'clock on the 28th, but it was my understanding that that was part of the committee as a whole, and number 2 was supposed to come up in 2 weeks from the last time.
I think that last time the measure was revised so that we were doing option 2.
This option 2.
Well, it wasn't really option 2. It was a
weeks.
completely different option, correct?
Option 2 was supposed to come up in 2 weeks. And the people that I talked to today was under that same understanding.
Okay, well, let's see if Bill Gray remembers what the order was. Do you remember? Or would it be your staff?
And number 3 was...
Number 3 is the same.
No, because they divided those. And 2 was supposed to come up in 2 weeks from last week, and number 3 was supposed to be on the agenda tonight.
Okay, well, who understands the order here? Bill Gray.
Well, the minutes could clarify what I'm about to say, but my notes had Dennis Roberts moved option 2, Charlie Smythe seconded it. It carried to send to the next council meeting, which is tonight.
Yeah, I remember that vote, too. It's in
And
the
to change the
minutes.
ordinance for tonight's council meeting. That's
Okay.
the last notes I have.
Okay.
So
Okay,
option
so
2,
Because
I thought it was
wasn't before you
changed.
last week. It was a new ordinance. Yeah.
Okay.
Ordinance 3 was last week.
Okay, so it is it's a new ordinance. It's not what was originally presented to the
but it was
committee.
not a committee as a whole. I'm looking at it, it was on the committee as a whole. Is that right?
Yes,
And
but it
then
was
number 2
changed. It was changed at the committee of the whole, so that's why it's a new ordinance. Is that correct?
On the new
Okay.
business?
That's what happened. Mr. Simon, city attorney.
When legal was requested to draft the ordinance to reflect what the committee of the whole recommended be approved, rather than drafting a whole new ordinance, Mr. Borman in our department realized that by modifying the parts of the existing ordinance, which would make essentially the change, would be the effective way of doing it. My recollection of what happened last time is it was the committee of the whole recommended option 2, and then Mr. Smythe recommended then an additional $3,000. I believe it was Mr. Smythe recommended an additional $3,000 be added, but there was never a vote on that component.
Okay. So, would you like to continue on what you would like?
Mother, you? Okay. So number 2 is a reimbursement for sanitary sewer repairs. And this six-page document, the 6-page document is the one then. The 6-page document is, I just want to be clear what I'm going to talk to. Is that number 2 under there, that 6-page document from you to the mayor, Mr.
I think maybe Brad Bennett could answer this. I don't see
If I'm
6
not
pages.
clear,
I
I
see
don't-
2 pages.
I mean, well, it was 6 pages, including what I saw on, wasn't it 6 pages? It showed
Well,
on
now
my
it's
computer.
down to 2 pages.
It
and
was
this is it
2-page
right here.
memorandum plus, I just want to be clear on the only thing I want to be clear on what I'm talking about, what I saw on my computer. That's the only thing.
The document before us tonight is not the same of the original 6 pages with options 1 through 5. I think that was in
No,
that
I'm talking about what I saw on my computer.
Right, on the
was
computer is the edited version
I'm
that's
talking about
being
tonight.
presented as new. What was on the computer is an edited version. That's why it's under there as a new ordinance.
I'm talking about tonight. I mean, what I saw today. See, I can only talk about what I saw on my computer because I don't know what y'all have, and I can't talk intelligently.
It should be the same. What's on the website should be the same.
Yeah, the
but
website.
Yes, ma'am.
And I can only talk, you know.
Are you
Just
here
sort of.
to say that you like what was called the original option 3?
No, no, that
I mean,
was
do you
my
want to just
husband.
easily say what you like, and then that will
No,
be your
the
testimony?
only thing I want to talk intelligently about what was on the computer, what I saw at home.
It would be wise.
To Mayor Laura L. Person and members of the City Council, from William R. Gray, Public Works Director, Gail L. Jameson, Assistant City Engineer, Bradley M. Bennett, Senior Civil Engineer, date May 30th, 2013, Reese Sewer Lateral Repair in Public Right-of-Way Policy Revision, Introduction. Is that
right?
That's the only thing. Okay, then I want to start then. This one, okay. And the reason I asked the question, I wanted to make sure that, okay, so now, okay, so apparently after reading this on there, that's what I consider option 2, with some changes from the original option 2. Okay, I can say that, okay, starting now with my 5 minutes. Okay, my comments are that in talking to the people, my comments are that to me, we shouldn't, as in talking to the people, that we might as well stay with the $4,500 unless we're going to have option 3, which says city repair lateral within the public right-of-way, where the city would repair the sanitary sewer lateral within the public right-of-way. The city will do that. Otherwise, if they vote on what was on that increasing the limit of maximum reimbursement by the city from $4,500 to $6,000 for sewer lateral repair in the public right-of-way, it's nothing for Dr. Ellis subdivision. It's for Diane Marlin and her cohorts and the 2 businessmen who came here. That's who the city is concerned with. Nothing with Dr. Ellis subdivision. It's not for us. None of that is for us. We might as well say with the $4,500 because it's going to cost us $10,000. That $6,000 is nothing for us. Now, Dr. Lewis, Reverend Lewis, is not Reverend Lewis, Brother Lewis, talked tonight. If, in fact, the people on the north side going to have access to that $6,000 like the people on the south side, then that's something he talked about. But they're not going to do that. So it's only that $6,000 that's going to benefit those people everywhere else, but not with Dr. Ellis. So all these 10 or 12 weeks mean nothing to us. I hope you people at home from Dr. Ellis hear me and what we talked about today and last week. It's nothing for us. So what we talked about last week is the same. If they vote on this, it's nothing for us. All of this was a waste of time. Unless they do number 3, the option 3, we get nothing. The $4,500 the drop in the bucket. But if they go to that $6,000, we're going to pay $2.10 more for nothing. The blood of Jesus. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mayor, I'd like to move deferment of ordinance number 2013-06-05, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 24, Section 24-49. I'd like to make that movement back to committee because I don't think we found resolution really on this issue.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ammons, seconded by Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by, okay. Okay.
All right.
Go ahead, Carol. You're first and then Dennis.
After I read through all of the changes made me more nervous than actually what was the discussion in the first place. And I think that this actually needs to be, it seems that we've gone again full circle and not actually addressed the issues that the elderly from that community came to this city council with in the first place. And I'm concerned that we won't make that decision correctly if we change the language the way it's currently presented.
Dennis?
All right. Well, I think we're really heading in the right direction. Okay, maybe it's not perfect yet. All right, so. But what we're saying again is that, again, the private owner of the sewer line lateral maintains his lateral to the connection under the street, no matter where it is. That the city will repair any construction that requires the pavement and the sidewalk to be disturbed. It will repair it back to its original state, and to the point of having larger amount of money available to the property owner to cover that repair. So the repair may not be 100%, but it will be $66,000. That's how I understand it currently. The problem with the third option was that there were very specific failures that had to occur to allow the property owner to get the recompense for the repair of the road. There were three, and one of them was the sinkhole, one of them was collapse. So I didn't feel like they covered all possible problems that could happen, and that it was just better to avoid specifying specific problems, but treat any problem that it would occur that would cause the repair of the street to be as part of the repair work. Now, the only problem now that I have is that there are some additional text parts to the ordinance that indicate that that public director can make the decision on whether there is funding available to cover the work in a particular year. And I think that's against the public interest. So if there isn't enough money in the pot, we should make sure that there is money in the pot, and if it requires an increase for the sewer benefit tax to make sure that there is that funding, then we have to go ahead and do that. We want to do that to the minimum amount possible, so we did ask that the city staff estimate how many times that failure is likely to be invoked to repair the laterals, and I can't remember if it was 16 times or 18 times, but they came up with a number, and it seemed reasonable and not outrageous to be able to cover those. The city has increased its reimbursement from 100%, from 75 cents to 100% for street, alley, or sidewalk removal and replacement. So, I mean, that seems real reasonable. So I think we're very, very close, and I'm not sure what further text we would need to make this work for all of you.
Eric.
I'm not convinced that this ordinance is on balance better than what we have. I'd be happy to defer this, but I'd like to not see it again for at least 6 months until we figured out what's going to happen with our overall city budget, until we're well engaged with the with the Carl issue. You know, I favored option 3. I favored option 3 when this was, when 6 out of 7 members on the council favored it. I guess I was a minority of almost 1 when the council flipped. I still favored it, and I still thought that was the best thing. However, that's clearly not going to happen now. And I think we have other things that we need to tend to. So I'm happy to defer this, but I don't want to see it again, you know, in committee of the whole next week or anytime really soon.
Okay, we have a motion to return to committee by Ammons, seconded by Brown. Charlie.
Yeah, you know, really, we have worked on this for 6 months. There is no clear solution. The issue is how you define responsibility for the sewer lateral. You know, if the sewer lateral is the property owner's responsibility, then the best thing the city can do is take and make payment for repairs of the right-of-way itself. That's what we're doing here. I don't see anything wrong with the language that's done here. It's very similar to the $4,500 reimbursement for the same thing. So we've just simply increased the limit now, first from $3,000 to $4,500, which was our first response, you know, and now to $6,000 to try to cover the full costs of repairing right-of-way. To me, this is the most equitable thing we can be doing with respect to this. Anything else is, you know, what if there's a companion program to this, it would be to develop some kind of grant and loan program to allow people to get to the money or to get to this reimbursement money more in advance. If we could figure out a way to get the $6,000, you know, to do a 3-way handoff on the money so that the city's not in a position of liability per our attorney's concerns here, you know, this would work a lot better. But it's because it has to go through this reimbursement procedure that we have some problems with this approach. But this is what our attorney is recommending. And to me, like I said, I think this is, I don't think we're going to come up with anything better than what we have before us. And we've wasted a lot of staff time. We've put a lot of energy into it. I think we should just vote this up or down. And then, you know, if we vote it up, you know, we get a $6,000 limit. If we vote it down, we stay with the current $4,500 program that we've got, and it should just go away for a long time.
Okay, we do have a motion to return it to committee. Carol.
I'll only redress once, according to council rules. Redress once. The language around this issue is troublesome for me because we don't want them to go away. I don't want them to be stuck with a huge bill and expense that they can't pay or don't have up front. And I think there are other factors that create disparities in certain communities as opposed to others that we tend to ignore as if they don't exist. There's an income gap disparity, right, that actually exists in America, and we seem to think that it doesn't. So I think when we start talking about trying to find equity, equity does not mean necessarily equal, because everything is not equal. What we're looking for actually is a resolution that I think actually it does exist, because when I looked at the budget, we do have money in reserves. Without even raising the sewer benefit tax, we could allocate the extra $40-something thousand if we wanted to. It's whether we want to draw down on our fund balance by $40-something thousand. But the money is there and is paid by the taxpayers. So I don't understand how the taxpayers get less benefit than us employing staff members and all of this other stuff. There can be a shift in thinking on the matter if we simply say, listen, look at the ordinances that are the old ordinances that regulate subdivisions. Maybe we need to change some language there. Look at this. I don't want to repeal the second ordinance because it leaves a person who may have this problem tomorrow really out there stuck, while Eric is right. Maybe 2 weeks is not enough time for us to really come and draw this issue down. We might actually need to do some research beyond what is currently available on the record, but we might have to look a little further back. And we don't like to do that, but we might need to do it because this was a specific issue brought by a specific community that drew the attention of the city. And we've seen this happen before. We saw it on Olympian Drive. We saw this happen with the roundabout. The elderly didn't want to deal with the roundabout, and therefore they came and spoke to that. We do this all the time. So I think that the time investment, yes, is a lot. I just got here, but you've been dealing with this for years. But the outcome has to be meeting the needs of those who pay into the sewer benefit tax in a greater way than we are currently allocating. And secondly, the language in here does bother me a little bit. Because I don't want to necessarily raise the sewer benefit tax across the city, because I don't think it's necessary to meet this need for this neighborhood. And I don't think that we're doing our due diligence to pass it as it is.
Diane.
The sewer lateral reimbursement program was actually put into place in 2008 as a result of people coming to council and expressing concerns about the high cost of repairing public right-of-way. And at that point, it was a 50% reimbursement up to $3,000. This spring, as a result of people coming to council from Dr. Ellis, we increased the reimbursement in as much as we could within the budget that we had, up to $4,500. I do not support increasing the sewer benefit tax at this time. We have too many other uncertainties. Our own fee schedule we approved a couple weeks ago already increased to 2.5%. This would add another couple percent. So I don't support increasing the sewer benefit tax. I think the current program does provide significant relief, and it is significantly more generous than any other program in the community in the area. And I just don't see, with all the budget uncertainties that before us, that we can say we're going to increase the tax again and generate more money for this particular program. So I think we have a very good program in place, and it's probably as good as we're going to get for a while.
Okay, we have a motion to return ordinance number 2013-06-050 to committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
I think the ayes have it. Next, ordinance number 2013-06-051, which would repeal the existing ordinance. I don't think you want to do that tonight, so is there a motion to...
I move ordinance number 2013-0605 to
051.
defeat, well...
051?
051.
Yeah.
I do not want to repeal it, so I don't know how to say that.
We'll say
City
send it
attorney.
to committee.
I think the city attorney is speaking.
Oh, Jim Simon.
With all due respect to the council, it looks like a second time this evening. We're kind of approaching these things backwards. When there's a resolution on the agenda, if somebody moves to approve it and there's no second, as you know, it dies for lack of a second, and the resolution as drafted goes away. If there is a second, and this could have happened with this, protest, it's on the agenda for approval. Somebody moves to approve it, somebody seconds it, and if the nays have it, the matter dies. And my recommendation, from a parliamentary procedure, there would be a motion to approve this. If there's no second, it dies, and that's the end of it. If there is, then there's a vote on the resolution pending. What you're doing is voting on a completely different resolution, which is not even on the agenda.
So
you can move to send it to committee, and what you do with it in committee is up to the committee. But in terms of the way it appears now, either you have two choices: move to approve the ordinance, and the vote falls where it may, assuming there's a second, or you move to table it and send it back to committee, and whatever the committee does with it is up to the committee.
So I'll restate that. to move to table ordinance number 2013-06-051, return it back to committee.
I think you don't table it, I think you
Well,
just
you
return it
defer
to the
you
committee.
return to committee.
I think in our rules, I think if you table it, it's just dead, which is a legitimate choice, or you can return it to committee, but you can't do both.
Just so you understand the ramification, the way these two ordinances were prepared, there was the first, but the second one, if you approve the resolution or ordinance as adopted, you will end up with literally no sewer reimbursement program.
That's right.
So we
All right.
want to do that to committee?
Yes.
Okay. Carol?
I think I'll restate it. Ordinance number 2013-06-051. I request to return this back to committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we move on to appointments. I have appointments. There are actually two new things that we've already been doing, but they haven't really had a chair. Under item 4D, we have been putting up plaques, and the person who's mostly spearheaded this is Dennis Roberts, so I would recommend that we have him be the chair. And the second one is also in existence. We haven't had an appointee from the council, but we have been having an Urbana Sister Cities Committee, which is kind of a community committee. So those are two clarifications on those.
Is it the process that we could omnibus approve the mayoral's appointments, number 4A through E?
Yes.
That's my action. Omnibus request on 4A.
Well, just mayor appointments you can do.
Or mayor's appointments.
Yeah. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jacobson. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Then there are reappointments, A through K. Is there a motion on that?
I move.
Is that?
I'll move omnibus for mayoral's appointments 5.
Reappointments, yeah.
Reappointments.
Okay,
A
that's
through K.
Carol Ammons made the motion, and it's been seconded by Charlie Smythe. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. I do have staff appointments. I'd like to defer one department, the finance department. I want to have a little bit more discussion internally about combining controller and information services manager. So I would like that. I'll hold that until June 17th, but I would recommend all the others. Motion by Smythe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ammons. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. And we'll bring back Finance Department on June 17th. Okay, now we have budget review presentations. The Fire Department. Chief Dilley.
One thing I can say is I'm glad I don't have to make your decisions. That's some tough decisions you all have. I appreciate the hard work that you put into that. First of all, coming to you for the last time, I guess, as official capacity of fire chief, and thank you for all the opportunities you've given me as a council and the mayor. I wanted to, especially for Mike and Carol, I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of the fire department and review, Bill, sorry, Bill. And then the rest of you, kind of a refresher into what we do a little bit. Sometimes I think as you see those maroon trucks running up and down the street, people forget that there's a whole lot that goes on than just running to calls. And so I thought it was kind of valuable to maybe give you an overview, and then I'll talk a little bit about our budget. We have 55 shift personnel divided into 3 shifts, obviously. 2 in the prevention office, 1 administrative assistant, and of course the chief's position. That's how the personnel is broken down in terms of the numbers. A little bit about our staffing levels, and I think this is to the credit of the city and to the hard work of the firefighters and to you as council members, is our staffing levels literally have remained the same since 1970, except for the addition of the campus station, which is, by the way, fully funded by the University of Illinois. And by contrast, though, it's interesting because we have absorbed a whole lot of extra work and continue to do that, and I think they do it very well day in, day out, because in 1970 we had 800 emergency calls. And the department really didn't do a lot of non-emergency efforts back then. So fast forward to today, and we now run 4,900, almost 5,000 calls a year, with primarily the same amount of individuals, 3 per apparatus, that we did in 70, other than, of course, the U of I aspect. The other thing I wanted to make you aware of, is, as you all probably already know, is we are an ISO 2 department. And just briefly, there are very few, and I can't give you the exact numbers, I think in Illinois maybe 50 ISO 1 and 2s. That's combining the 2. ISO 1 is the #1 rated department in the state of Illinois, and there's only a few of them. And the only way we could ever reach ISO 2 would not be financially prudent nor feasible for us, and that would be to add numerous staff members. And that's the only part of that puzzle we don't have. But in terms of the citizens, it's not a lot of difference. Maybe a little bit in commercial policy rates, but it's pretty much for average citizens. It doesn't make a lot of difference between 1 and 2. And we just recently obtained that through some very hard efforts of a lot of our people. So I'm pretty proud of that. I want you to know that that's a very high achievement for us as a department, and for any department as far as that goes. I mentioned that the only time that people sometimes think of the fire department is when they're running up and down these roads and running the sirens and that, but we do a lot of non-emergency things, and part of that is our inspections. And just so you know that we conduct inspections as engine companies. They go out and conduct the inspections as a company off the apparatus, and then we have a number that are done by the more technical folks who work out of the prevention office. So last year, just to give you an idea of what we did, 780 commercial inspections, 442 multifamily commons areas. Now, that's not the entire apartment and living areas, it's just the commons. 15 hotel motels, 70 U of I inspections, and 37 certified housing inspections. One of the programs we are really proud of, and I think gives our citizens the most for their dollar, is our Home Fire Life Safety Program. And that's where the guys and gals go every Saturday from literally April to November and knock on every door that they can get to in the city to offer to check their detectors and do safety checks. And I literally believe that we have saved lives. We've only lost 2 lives since 1996 to fire in Urbana. And I credit that in whole to this efforts of our prevention and the HFLS. So just to give you an idea, they visited 6,612 houses, and that would include houses where people may not be home, but they went there and still knocked on the door. 1,142 of them, they were entered, and keep in mind some people will not allow us in, and we obviously don't push our way. We try to convince them we're here for your benefit, but some people still want their privacy, and we understand that. We actually checked 2,331 detectors. We provided 214 batteries and 145 detectors. We have a campus fire inspector that's part of those 2 people in our inspection office, and that particular inspector conducts housing inspections on campus, lab inspections, additional building inspections, and RD and RA training. So we go to the housing departments and train them on fire safety, fire extinguisher classes, and those type of things. And then there are other training opportunities that we have throughout the year where we may go to a sorority or fraternity and do some fire safety training. But huge effort by our campus fire inspector, which again is funded by the campus contract. Training is becoming more and more, and by the way, in our ISO efforts, we received every point we could possibly get, much to the credit of Division Chief Chad Hinch, who runs our training program. He's very, very good at it. We got every point we could get. We spend a lot of hours training. We take it seriously because we're thankful that we don't have a lot of fires, that we do a lot of prevention efforts, but when it occurs, we want to make sure we're ready and safe-wise and to be able to do the best we can do for our citizens and give them what we're here for. So last year, we spent 22,792 overall training hours. And that's basically 20 hours a month by every firefighter over 12 months and as a minimum additional. And you see a picture here of they're out at the tower doing some fire training here. Our emergency functions are varied. Fires, obviously, EMS, vehicle accident and extrication, technical rescue, rope, trench, confined space, and structural collapse, and I'll talk about that real briefly in just a second. Hazardous materials, gas odors and leaks, citizens assist, where if somebody falls out of bed, we'll go back and help them back into bed, those type of things, non-medical, and anything else nobody else knows who to call. The proverbial cat in the tree call, we go on those too. So it is very, very much. Again, just a quick spattering of our fire stations. Upper left, Station 1 right here. Lower left, Station 3 on North Lincoln. Upper right, Station 2 on Philo Road. And lower right is the campus station, which was built and funded by the campus. Just to give you an idea of some of the responses, I wanted to just show a quick spattering of the upper left, our hazmat, which I want to talk about that also briefly in just a minute. But our guys are preparing to go into a hazardous material incident and with their suits and their air packs and everything on. Some of these materials they cannot come in contact in, and it will literally destroy the turnout gear. So we have to have not only protection for the firefighters, but protection for the very expensive gear that you give us to buy. Obviously, lower left is a fire. Some of you might recognize that. Upper right is a trench rescue where we actually had an individual who have a trench cave in on him, and we're well trained in that. And lower right is a vehicle, a very nasty vehicle accident which required extrication. So just kind of an idea of when we do our responses, that's kind of what we're out there doing. We have what I think, in fact, our Division Chief, Phil Edwards, it will be receiving in October the Educator of the Year for the state of Illinois. Phil is widely renowned in the state for what he does and does a tremendous job, and he oversees our prevention division, which includes, and not only Phil doing it, but the companies are out there doing this too. So just keep in mind they're visiting the schools and conducting a lot of these sessions, school visits, any kind of special events. Like last Saturday was the Safe Kids, a safety event at the County Fairgrounds that we were involved in. We have a number of safe events throughout the year that we attend. Fire Prevention Week, which is a huge operation that we conduct across the street here and see literally thousands of young people out of the schools and daycare centers in the town. Station tours, which go on fairly frequently, and then we do a number of fire safety classes for numerous individuals, including schools and daycares. And I've just kind of show you a quick overview of, in the upper left-hand corner is our fire safety house, which is also a storm simulator that can show children what to do if there's unfortunately, what we've seen in Oklahoma, which can very well happen and has happened here in Urbana. So we conduct not only fire safety, but storm safety. Lower left is actually a tour of one of the fire stations. Upper right is actually Phil conducting what Phil has written, not only songs, but his own puppet show that he conducts all over the place. And that's Phil doing it across the street at Fire Prevention Week. And then the lower right is a fire extinguisher class that we're conducting for some of the students. Let me talk a little bit just briefly about the budget. And I might add that Bill's working very diligently and very hard to try to get us to do our part to try to see to it that we hold our budget lines, which we are doing. And we want to do our part in that because the other departments are also doing that, and we believe in that. I want to talk about a few past sacrifices and how we've kind of overcome that a little bit, to the credit, once again, of Division Chief Chad Hinch, who is a resident expert at obtaining grants. And I'll show you some of the grants he's got to get us through this. This is just a good example of kind of some of the things that we dealt with. I want to just pick this out of the budget just as one thing that we've been able to overcome some of the funding shortcomings that we've had due to our budget difficulties here. And I fully support what you've done, and this is not complaining. This is just letting you know how we function around this. And here's just some examples of us running the gear a little bit longer than what we should be doing. And you can see from the 4 pictures that we wear out our toes when we're crawling through buildings. We get holes in the gear. The reflective opens up holes in the gear, and the pockets fail. And those are the type of things that we deal with. So just to give you an idea of the type of monies that this takes, is in 06 and 07, our personal protective equipment, which is the gear that you just saw, we had a budget of $10,116. Back in that day, one set of gear cost us $1,500. 07, 08, we reduced it to $8,590 to try to make some budget cuts. 08, 09, we got back up to $9,100. In 10, 11, we completely wiped that out, and we replaced no gear that year. And that really caused us to suffer in a lot of ways. And what our division chief did in charge of the gear was began sending the gear out and have it repaired to kind of get it a few more years, because we wanted to do our part, and that was one of the few things we cut. Again, thankfully, now again in 13, 14, we've got our money back to $9,300, but now our gear is costing us $2,000 a set. So we're losing ground constantly. So what we've done is, again, Chad Hinch, who is an expert at getting grants, he's got 3 of them for us, got us a $14,000 grant for gear replacement, which we will be then replacing some of the worst gear this year, and then hopefully we will be back on track to replace between maybe 5 sets a year. Unfortunately, I was just informed as I walked out of the room earlier that we just had a fire, and because of the hazardous materials in this fire, we just destroyed 5 sets of gear tonight. And so we're going to have to figure out some kind of way, and maybe even ask the facility to help us to replace this gear, because we do have spare gear that we keep for this very reason, but we're going to have to replace these firefighters' gear that got destroyed from the chemicals tonight. So these are the kind of things that you kind of run into, that you try to plan for it as best as possible. Chad also got us a $50,000 grant for training, that we trained every single member on the department in our incident command system, and an enhanced incident command system that will help them actually operate better on the fire ground. He also just recently got us $55,000 for nozzles and valves that we will use to replace nozzles, valves, maybe some hose that go on the hose, the engines, those type of things. And I've jokingly said anytime you tie a fire department to it, they raise the price about 100%. So we pay a lot of money for this stuff. In fact, one valve is like $5,000. Some of the nozzles and valves that we were replacing were from the 80s. So we're just trying to get into the recent technology. But we have survived on these grants, and I'm very thankful for these grants that we have gotten, and the fact that our guys are really good at attaining these, and we will continue to try to get these grants as long as the money's there. And I will say that that money has continued to deplete over the years, so our opportunities are less and less, but we're going to continue to compete for those. Just to let you know, in terms of our technical rescue, this apparatus that you see here was purchased through Homeland Security money. As I think one of you most brightly pointed out, that's still taxpayer money. It's just not Urbana. It comes from federal tax dollars, and they bought this equipment for us. That's how we're able to conduct this. And in agreement for that, we've also said that if there is a major tornado that hits somewhere in Illinois, we'll send our assets and our resources to help them out, just like they would come to us if we ever receive a tornado strike here again. So it's a give and take, and it's part of the process. Some of the future needs, I've been here before you for the last 5 years saying the same things, and because things haven't progressed in a very timely fashion, we've been okay. But I want just to keep this on your radar in that we still need to look, as things develop on the east side of town, a moving of the station to an area somewhere out on Windsor Road, that we at least need to think about purchasing ground, and I know we can't even think about that right now. We're trying to figure out what to do about sewer laterals, and I do appreciate your, and like I said, you have a hard job here. I wouldn't want to make the decisions you're making, but I want to keep that on your radar, that's going to need to happen as we move east to keep our ISO and our response times what they are. We are up to our eyeballs in storage problems. Some of our stuff we're actually even storing outside in the weather because we just run out of spaces to store them. So that is something that we'll need to be addressing as time goes on and money comes available. We have a public address system at Station 1 that once the firefighters reach the apparatus floor, they can't tell what's going on. They can't hear it. It's inaudible. So we've tried to do some other things to address that. We actually installed, through the help of MetCAD's funding, a rip and tear system where they can actually go to the printer and rip off the page and actually see it. We also have the MDCs, but they go down constantly, which Bill's been working on getting us a better system for that, which hopefully we can replace that system to. But either way, it slows down response times because they have to go to the printer and look at the address or else bring up the computer before they can take off. So hopefully as time goes on in the future, as we get money, we'll have to look at that. And then we want to seriously continue to maintain our apparatus replacement, which we have done a good job in the past. Maintaining and keeping good equipment is important to the future of being able to respond as we have in the past. So again, not saying you need to do this year, not saying that you have to include this in the budget, but just want you to be, for the coming years, to be aware of some of the needs that might be out there. Okay, that's all I have. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Carol.
I have just one question. First and foremost, I really appreciate the building inspectors. They do an excellent job. They really do help a lot. But the question is, the inspection totals where you talked about going to the community, the homes and things, is that done during regular time? Is that done during overtime?
It's done on regular time. It's done on Saturday mornings from 10 to noon, and then the afternoons from 1 to 4.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any other questions? Charlie.
Yeah, Chief. Real quickly, you brought up a real interesting statistic. What it was, 1970, 800 and some calls?
Yes.
Versus 4,000 something now. Do you have a breakdown of what those calls were then and now? I mean, was it 800 fire calls and now we have 800 fire calls and we have all these other things, or do we have changes in proportions? I mean, I know you've added all these other duties. Is it because there's less firefighting, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. In 1970, there wasn't a lot. They called them inhalator calls in that day. They were not really medical calls. They weren't. Our staff wasn't trained to respond to medicals. 60% of our calls are medicals, and that has increased currently. Yes, and that has increased over the years. And it's broke down between fire calls, through automatic alarms, through medical calls, through stills, which are checking detectors, carbon monoxide calls, those type of things. So we do have the breakdown of that currently. I don't have it from 1970, but I kind of know because I had close relatives on the department back then.
Yeah, so let me ask it this way too. If there were 800 calls for service in 1970, were 500 of those for fire and 300 for the other stuff, and today we have 4,000 something calls, and we still have 500 for fire, but we have all these others, or is, or do we have fewer fires in actuality, or, is there
Yeah.
changes there?
Yeah, actually, I do think we have fewer fires, and the reason that is because all the efforts you saw, the prevention that's been done by the shift personnel and by Phil and his division. So, yeah, I do think that that's probably a different. I don't know the breakdown. I couldn't tell you from 70 to now what the exact numbers were, but I do know that there is a difference.
Yeah, it's not really firefighting anymore. 40 years ago it was firefighting. Now it's something else.
Yeah, now it's hazardous materials, it's EMS, it's even trench rescue and confined space rescue. Yeah, it's all those added things that we're doing today. Hazardous materials, they didn't even know what that was in 1970. And, of course, medical calls. Like I said, it wasn't the only time they'd respond is a serious accident or a drowning or something like that. So that's increased.
I think you do a really good job.
Thank you.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
And we get a lot of compliments on the fire department. But I want to ask you, I was told that we are called by MetCAD to go to certain medical facilities that have doctors present because they want someone taken to a hospital. Would you comment on that, please?
Yeah, there are a couple medical facilities, particularly on Windsor Road, that we would respond to. That would, if they have a patient visiting there and they have a heart attack, or they have some type of acute onset of some sort of situation, they will call, and we will respond. I got to be real careful about what I say here because I know everybody might be able to hear this, but emergency medicine is so much different than a doctor's visit. And I'm not diminishing doctors or nurses at all. They do a great job. But sometimes having a responsive emergency responder, in fact, I've been on scenes where doctors have showed up, and in a setting of emergency medicine, they're really not clear on what to do. And our guys are trained in the emergency end of it. So I think it's twofold. I think number one is because the patient needs to be transported, and we will go with a transport, and we can actually get there earlier. So if you would have a cardiac arrest at the clinic on Windsor Road, we could go there, administer the shock, start the CPR at a much quicker pace, and maybe even save a life, who would be eventually transported to the actual emergency room.
By an ambulance.
By an ambulance, that's correct. Second part of that is the emergency medicine actually has that training in that area. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know how to take that down here. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, next is Community Development Services. Libby Tyler.
Hello, everybody. Another PowerPoint. And it bears some resemblance to the one I did a year ago, but I know that we have 3 new council members, so it is updated. We do have a mission statement to maintain and improve the quality of life for Urbana citizens by providing programs of economic development, housing, planning, zoning enforcement, redevelopment, building safety code enforcement, historic preservation, and community block grants. So there's a lot in there, and sometimes referred to community development as a catch-all department for the city of Urbana. We have pretty clear structure, however, 4 divisions, and we have 23 full-time employees and just under 2 part-time employees. So the 4 divisions are economic development, and Tom Carino, who's here tonight, is our manager there. Planning division, and Robert Myers was here earlier. Building safety division, that is headed by John Schneider, and grants management, Kelly Murkowski's here tonight. So we have a number of programs, and I've got some additional slides on our programs that we conduct within these 4 divisions, but some that you'll be very familiar with will be the Market at the Square, our TIF districts, our public arts program, rental registration program, many, many different things that we do. One thing I'd like to highlight, though, is that we work with probably the lion's share of the boards and commissions that serve the city. And these are volunteers that serve in many different capacities and many different, huge variety of boards and commissions. So we have over a dozen. These are most of them here. And so as you look at your packets every Thursday or Friday, whenever you get those, you'll see that an awful lot of the materials will come through community development through these boards and commissions. So I believe this is a very important part of the functioning of our city government, and I just wanted to state how much we enjoy working with the boards and commissions and really appreciate the expertise of the appointments that you make each year when you do that. And I've added our most recent one, added this year, the Market at the Square Advisory Board. I think the list of boards and commissions also gives you a sense of the diversity of functions that the department does as well. So we do have a diversity of programs and functions. We also have a diversity of funding sources as well as revenues. Our operations are funded not only by the general fund, but our TIF districts. We get CDBG, that's Community Development Block Grant, and home funds from HUD, from the Federal Housing and Urban Development Department, as well as supportive housing grants, and we get revenues from Market at the Square. We also receive revenues from grants, building permits can be significant, fees and fines. Our rental registration is a revenue-generating program. Market at the Square rentals come in, and we have program income from some of the grants, programs that we run in grants management. Do need to note, though, that those HUD funds are decreasing, and I looked back at what we received 10 years ago, and we're down about 40 or so %. So that's pretty discouraging each year to see those declines, even as the needs increase for our low-income areas. On the plus side, though, we are seeing increases in construction and our permit review activity, and we did see an uptick in single-family home construction this year. I've got only one slide on the budget because really we are holding to that zero budget, and so the line items are essentially identical to last year's budget. There's some slight adjustments that you'll see. These were made by the comptroller to adjust for costs for pensions, longevity, insurance. Made some other very small adjustments based on spending patterns to right-size different line items. We did note that we had higher costs for some housing professional services this past year, and these would be related to properties that need to be secured, that are vacant and need to be secured, costs such as associated with the Urbana Townhomes property. So those were things that weren't fully budgeted that we needed to accommodate. Also, moving forward, we still have this position shown in the budget, but it's being held vacant. And this is our administrative assistant 2 in the grants management division. And this is because of those HUD grant reductions. That was due to retirement of Connie Eldridge, that we no longer have that administrative support in that division. Also, I would note that we'll be monitoring our housing inspection budget over the next several months to see if this is something that we would need to perhaps increase, add another inspector. It's been difficult to keep up with some of the complaints and the calls that have come in for our housing inspection through our rental registration. And of course, this would be an adjustment that we would do by looking at our rental registration fees. So it wouldn't be something that we would look to general fund to accommodate, but really just to make sure that we're keeping up with that program. I'd like to talk now about some accommodations, some accomplishments over the last year for the different divisions, and start with economic development, Tom Carino's division, and some of the things that we've really concentrated on over the last year have been marketing Urbana to residents and visitors. And you'll recall it was just a little bit over a year ago that we looked to provide more of that capacity in-house. And I think we're doing a really excellent job. I think Kenny Natalie Kenny Marquez is doing an excellent job there. I was just flipping through this Community Concierge magazine earlier this evening, and there's so much good information in here about Urbana, about marketing Urbana, about our public arts program. In fact, the cover story was written by Christina McClelland, who's our public arts coordinator, and there's a great feature on Market at the Square as well. So I'm very proud of those accomplishments. We work very closely with UBA, the Urbana Business Association, Chamber of Commerce, and other organizations to assist businesses in Urbana. And we've had a number of ribbon cuttings again. So we have a very healthy business climate and a lot of activity, and I hope that I also appreciate the excellent economic development report that Tom gave earlier this evening with some of the great news on the new leases in the downtown area in particular. So we've had some major achievements in downtown redevelopment with the Cake Design, the reopening of the Urbana Landmark Hotel a year ago. That was something that we still were working towards, still hadn't happened, and the filling out and complete development of the Gateway Shops at Cunningham and University. Going further north, we've had quite a bit accomplished with new developments planned and underway at Frasca in their simulator business, Mervis Industries, and Creative Thermal Solutions, and also mentioned Soccer Planets in that area as well. We've also seen a lot of activity in the Philo Road and the Pines at Stone Creek Commons area with new businesses and new build-out occurring there as well. And I've already mentioned some of our successes with Market at the Square and the Public Arts Program. In fact, we've done annual reports for both of those programs fairly recently, and we'll have another full report after the new calendar year. So here's some images of just some of the ribbon cuttings from this last year. And it's just a select few, but you can see what a variety of businesses that we work with. And some of these have just been such great successes and have really added to the community with just vitality and things to do and jobs, and not to mention retail sales and income tax, et cetera. Here's some great images of the restoration that's ongoing at the Urbana Landmark Hotel and some of the interesting features there. These are images from Market at the Square, of course. You can see that for yourself every Saturday morning now. And then some images from the Public Arts Program with the Boneyard Creek Arts component shown there, and that's now under construction. Our Gallery of the Corridor shown, some of the events that we sponsor, such as the POPS program that Diane mentioned earlier tonight, and one of our public sculptures. Kids at the Market, also doing art at the Market. Okay, next division I would like to highlight will be the Building Safety Division. These are calendar year numbers. So this last year we had just under $400,000 in permit revenues. Last year, that was quite a bit higher. We did have a major high-rise that brought in some revenues, as you would recall. And we've had probably a better balance of new construction and remodels, additions, but 21 million in new construction, 17 million in remodels and additions. So still healthy development activity. The home construction was up, 23 single-family, 2 duplex, and 23 multifamily unit permits issued, a total of almost 7,400 building and housing inspections conducted. So those are about split, a little more than half would be on new building inspections and about half on the housing inspections, just to give you a rough idea. Yes?
Libby, where does the Carl Tower fit in all this?
It's not in this calendar year.
Okay.
So the numbers are down on the permit revenues. Those were in the last year.
Okay, so in 2011 then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I would say coming up, we will, and it's really just, I hate to say this compared to everything else that's going on, we will have a permit fee for the emergency room of about $100,000. So Campus Circle will be a major permit revenue for us of about $100,000. So that is coming in like in the next few weeks. So that would be, could be split between this fiscal year and next fiscal year.
Diane has a question, too.
Yeah, hi Libby. Can you go into a little bit more detail on the increased use of the non-compliance tickets? As you know, that's one of my personal areas of interest.
Sure.
How do you plan to proceed from here with that?
Well, we are using these regularly now. I wasn't quite to that bullet point, but we've had a lot of success, as you know, over the years in working with apartment owners towards compliance. We've had very good success. Unfortunately, we've had less success with some properties, particularly in southeast Urbana. So we've developed a ticket form over the last year and are using that in our toolbox for achieving compliance. So we still provide the notices of violations that we do, and we still work with the timeframes that are in our ordinance, our adopting ordinance for the building code. We may give extensions for weather for non-vital violations, but we're now, as a matter of course, issuing these non-compliance tickets if the deadlines aren't met.
Is that at
and
the
that's
second?
we are seeing effectiveness is a different approach, a different mindset, but we believe, unfortunately, that this is necessary, and we're seeing that this is getting attention with the folks who aren't able to comply. So we think it's a really important tool to have in the toolbox.
I completely agree. So
Yeah.
is the standard procedure an automatic non-compliance ticket after the second violation?
Yeah.
At the second violation notice?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's see. So jumping back up to the rental registration, we registered just under 9,000 rental units. This past year, we collected just over $200,000 in those rental registration revenues. We have worked diligently on a weekly basis, really on a daily basis, and coordinating code enforcement with other departments at the city and with the mayor's leadership, working closely with fire and police and public works, our nuisance inspectors, to do coordinated code enforcement. We've had a lot of great support from our legal division to help achieve that. We continue to have quite a bit of focus on problem properties and vacant properties. And, we don't have too terribly many of those, but they certainly catch our attention and drain resources, and they're a concern for the neighborhoods that are impacted by them. And I think I addressed the noncompliance tickets as something that we have had to use more and more. And I would also say that since I've been in my position, each year I have spent more time, and there's been more focus at the city on these problem properties. So this is something that is increasing for sure in Urbana, and I think really in cities nationwide, that you're seeing more foreclosures, perhaps more vacant properties, more properties that are not being adequately maintained. So we're not unique. No.
I had a question on the rental units registered and registration compliance in general. I think an inspection of the registration. So this is like the 5th year, I think, so we should have already done a complete cycle of inspections. Do you know if that's on schedule as far as inspecting everything we know about?
I think we've just completed a cycle, so it's just about, I do think, our goal was 3 to 5 years, and we were really hoping more for 3, but it is more like 5.
Okay.
And when we adopted that program in 2007, I want to say, it enabled us to hire a second housing inspector. So we doubled our manpower on that. But the time spent in the problem properties has increased, so that's kind of diverted us from some of the systematic inspections.
So of the 8,900 registered, have you done any comparison to what we think should be there according to the census data, and see like what percentage have registered, or if we have some idea of how many people are registered and how many are out there that haven't registered?
We think we have really good compliance there because we have so many data points to use. We have our recycling bills, which would code whether it's single family or rental. So that's that's an easy one to look at. We have the tax assessor, and then we have complaints that or not complaints, but people will let us know we think that's a rental. Some of these rental situations, like a sabbatical house or a room in a house, are going to be harder to detect. Those would be harder to detect if we go by the tax assessor or the recycling bills. So those we do need neighbors to let us know. And we also detect just through our systematic inspections and tenant complaints and other inspections. But we think that we have very good compliance. We also will assume something's a rental and send a letter assuming there will be a rental, and then they will need to respond back that they're not, otherwise they'll be billed. So we've worked through a lot of those issues the first few years, and I have to say that the finance department does an excellent job helping to track down these apartments and these owners. So we think we're capturing them. It did decline a little bit from last year, so we did have some units that came off the market. But definitely for those in your wards, if you think that there are some rentals that may not be obvious or may not be in the tax bill, please let us know and we will investigate. Any other questions on building safety? Okay, here's some construction projects just to show you some of those 7,400 inspections where we might have spent our time. That's our pool. Just about ready to open. There's the Heart and Vascular Institute, a very major project. There's a Berkey's Farm Store under construction, moving dirt out on 130. And this is a new residential. This would be the Water's Edge development. I'm sorry, Stillwater Landing in the along 130 in the Stone Creek development. Third division would be the planning division. And just some numbers for this last year, calendar year, they had 25 plan cases. So those had gone down a few years ago, and now they seem to be coming back, ticking back up again. And of course, you are seeing more plan cases coming to you as well. We had 10 cases that came through our zoning board, 8 cases that came through our Historic Preservation Commission, and a number of other cases that are dealt with administratively. The planners work with other departments, work with the public quite a bit. They helped to draft the Climate Action Plan, which was adopted this last year. They drafted a major rewrite for our industrial zoning designations to update those, and that involved rezoning about 100 properties in Urbana, but we now have a heavy industrial and then a light industrial office designation, so we're right zoning properties in Urbana. We worked with Public Works again on developing a legacy tree program. Our 100 Most Significant Buildings project is nearing completion. We have a website that's completely populated, so you can look up these 100 buildings, find out all about them, all from our website. And we're very close to getting a podcast tour complete. That will be completed in the next month or so, where you'll be able to tap into a podcast to learn more about these properties. And that was done under a grant from the state. We completed revisions, again, working with other departments to update our noise ordinance. We've received awards from PACA and from the Illinois Association of Historic Preservation Commissions on our historic preservation activities. We've been active in the Bike to Work Day and Bike to Work Month this past year. Also working with police, the new court diversion program for bicycle violators of traffic laws, and working towards education as opposed to just issuing tickets there. And then we do ongoing site plan reviews for new development as well as zoning enforcement. And I think we had 50 cases that were resolved on zoning enforcement. And some images of planning activities. There's one of the plaques that Dennis talked about earlier, and some of the celebration activities associated with that high school plaque. That was coordinated with our Public Arts Commission. Here's the award from the Illinois Historic Preservation Association, a modern home tour that was very successful last year, and an image from our 100 Most Significant Buildings. Other programs, here's that coveted bragging rights trophy that we managed to win this last year, and hopefully we can hang on to it for a while. And there's some of the crew from the Bike to Work Day and a picture of the court diversion. A very, very well attended and successful program so far. Grants management, finally, and has also been a very busy year for grants management. The Hamilton on the Park project's under construction. That is a redevelopment of Dunbar Court. So that's the housing authority up in northwest Urbana, right next to Champaign. So that's under construction with 36 units. Also under construction, a multi-use pathway connecting Lenore and Adams in the AMVETS 2 neighborhood. And this has been a long-standing need in that neighborhood to provide a connection, and that's being done with our block grant funding. Also with our block grant funding, funding complete streetlight replacement in the King Park neighborhood. And in the we also help to fund some security lighting in the Hunter Austin area. Again, using the CDBG, we funded an apartments upgrade for Community Elements. It happens to be located in Champaign on Elm Street. We purchased the property, the vacant property at Learman in Washington, and we provided a lease to the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee for a community garden. It's a really important project for that neighborhood, and we're happy to have been a part of that. We worked with Neighborhood Alliance, that's an affiliate of Habitat, and with Homestead on 3 completed home builds for new affordable housing units in Urbana. We are working with Brinshore and Homestead again to seek state funding for the Kerr Avenue project, and that's a property about 2.5 acres in North Urbana on Kerr Avenue that we're seeking low-income housing tax credits for a new affordable housing development that's hopefully will be completely zero energy or very highly energy efficient is a goal there. We issued or processed 36 grants for whole house rehabilitation, emergency grants, and senior repair grants in our target areas. We staffed 5 of our transitional housing units through grants, as well as administered supportive housing grants. We held 2 neighborhood cleanups, one in the King Park neighborhood and one at Solo Cup for East Urbana, and served 476 homes. And then what we'll be doing shortly will be, again, helping to facilitate the consolidated social service funding. And we acquired 4 properties this last year, which will be used for affordable housing. And here's some images. There's an access grant. This is part of our, like a shed away program where we look in our target area to remove dilapidated structures. This would be a whole house. This would be one of the, I think it's the Neighborhood Alliance property on Dublin. And there's a schematic of the Lenore Adams walkway, one of the new street lights, the garden, the interesting design for the garden plots, and an image from our neighborhood cleanup. So, what are our goals for this budget year coming up? We want to continue marketing Urbana to residents and visitors. We want to assist on the increased development requests that we're seeing in the downtown and elsewhere. We want to continue to implement our downtown plan, to redevelop the Goodyear block. That's the vacant property directly north of the City Hall. We'd like to see additional redevelopment along University Avenue, particularly at the Blockbuster block, we call that, would be at the southwest corner of Cunningham and University, and many other sites in the downtown. We want to fill key vacancies and market to desired uses, continue to work on beautifying Cunningham Avenue, continue the vibrancy of Market at the Square and the public arts programs, annex key properties. That's something that will be important as we look at some of the budget limitations that we have, that we need to once again look at our corporate boundaries and look at what makes sense for what should be in the city and what should remain unincorporated. We want to continue our coordinated problem properties efforts. This is an important one, and in some ways maybe should have been on the first slide, but we want to work with neighborhood groups that are in need, and in particular look for redevelopment of the Silver Water area. And I should also add here that we want to get the Urbana townhomes demolished. So that's a concrete goal that we will achieve this year. We're making progress towards that. So we want to work with these neighborhoods that need our assistance. I want to continue to seek funding for the Kerr Avenue Affordable Housing Project. We want to adopt, and this is the long-standing project that has been on my list, is to update our subdivision code so we can get all our standards up to date and modernized. And we do have the code revised and ready to go, but we have a manual practice that we want to go along with it. So that's a goal, to get that done, and working with Public Works to achieve that. And finally, we want to be part of the team that works on finding ways to address the Carl tax loss issue, which is really so huge, and we want to use whatever talents we have to work with others and other agencies to address that particular issue. So thanks for your patience, and this is my contact information. I know I work with all of you quite often, and for new council members, I would, love to have you come in and show you around, and whatever your schedule will allow. Looking forward to that. And here is a really fantastic photograph of something we should all be proud of.
Okay, thank you very much, Libby. Any more questions for Libby? You do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie, you want to share?
Of course. You going to sit over there? Okay.
Oh, I think I should.
Oh, we have a presentation from the executive department, led by the mayor.
I don't have a PowerPoint. But one of the great innovations was to put illustrations on the budget. So now every year looks different from the year before. Of course, for the last few years, we've had exactly the same budget, pretty much. But anyway, my goals, I think maybe this document needs to be a little revised. We have a whole goal-setting process with City Council and Mayor and Chief of Staff, and we'll be starting that. I think we've given the existing goals to the new people, but we'll go through and get your ideas and see what we're looking at. But I've always pushed for having the main goal be public safety, and my role is to try to get the resources that our excellent department heads need. And so certainly the huge goal that we have before us is how to resolve this whole problem with Carl. And the whole issue of who's not-for-profit in this country, it isn't just Urbana. We found out, talking with Stan Jenkins from the Board of Review, that started this whole process in Illinois about what is not-for-profit, what's charities. They were studying the hospitals and found that Provena wasn't really doing very much in terms of charity, and that was a hospital that was founded by nuns. And hospitals typically started as kind of charity things, and this whole idea that there's still a charity is still there. But in talking with Stan Jenkins, he told us that the school district in Cleveland is suing the Cleveland Clinic on the same issue. And also, he pointed out Pittsburgh, the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center is a very highly profitable facility, and yet they're not paying property taxes, and the city of Pittsburgh is challenging this. And I did get an email recently that CBS News did a story on this. I think I sent it out to all of you, that what was called not-for-profit are these corporations that are actually making much higher profits than other businesses, and yet they don't pay federal income tax, they don't pay state income tax, and then they want a property tax break for quote-unquote charity. So that is the huge issue that we're going to have to deal with. And I think you can see that we do have an excellent staff in Urbana. We have wonderful employees, very conscientious people at all levels, and excellent managers. And if you look at the executive department, we have 4 divisions. We have administration, which would be the mayor's office and chief of staff. And I'm the liquor commissioner. In addition, you already know I'm the liquor commissioner, but in addition to being the mayor. And my administrative assistant, Jolinda Ross, does a great job in administering the liquor licenses. And she also talks to people and gives them great ideas, like a restaurateur got him an idea to move across the street and start up a new restaurant, which he seems to be doing pretty well. We have the legal department. We have 3 attorneys and 2 staff members. And we have they do a great job. I think we stay out of trouble by having good legal advice. We have the Human Relations Department, Todd Rent, and he has a half-time person that's split between the chief of staff. Tony is our person that works in both human relations and administration. Tony, can't think of his name right now.
Weck.
Tony Weck. And he does a very good job. And Todd has picked up answering FOIA things as well as doing the Civilian Review Board. And that takes up a huge amount of time, the kind of FOIA requests that we get. Hundreds of hours of staff time are devoted to answering questions. And sometimes it's frivolous and sometimes it's serious, but it still is all taken very seriously, and we spend the time to answer the questions. And we have human resources, which used to be called personnel. And we've got an excellent staff there. They do advertising and evaluation of people. And we'll be looking for a fire chief. Not that Chief Dilley can be replaced, but we do need a new fire chief. And so they're going to be doing that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the executive department. No questions. Yes, Charlie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. I'm chairing that.
Okay. You can still ask a question.
Diane.
I'm glad you're taking another look at the finance and IT position, because as much as I know Bill can work 1 million hours a week, but I just think those 2 jobs require 2 people doing them in some form or another, especially as we're looking toward the build out of UC2B and whatever that implications that has for the community, as well as all the financial challenges. So I'm just glad you're still looking at how to do that.
Yeah, he's done a tremendous job, but I'm afraid of him getting exhausted. He says he won't get exhausted, but I'm afraid he might. So I think we have to revisit that one.
He's hiding somewhere.
Yeah, maybe he's resting. The guy needs a rest. He's dealing with a technical issue, okay. He's excellent, and we had Champaign Telephone come in and talk with us about UC2B and all the great work that Bill has done for the city of Urbana. We were already getting people connected with broadband before UC2B came into effect, and he deserves a great deal of credit for that. He's also a CPA, and he's done a great job with the finances, and there's a lot to learn. I mean, Ron Eldridge did an excellent job, and he was there for a long time, so he knew all the ins and outs, and Bill's brought some innovations. But I enjoy working with the staff. I enjoy working with the council and hearing from the public. We have involved the public in a formal way. We have many more boards and commissions than we did back in 2005. And I also hear directly from people what kind of problems they're coming up against. And we try to work out solutions. It might be an ordinance, it might just be having somebody show up and deal with the problem, but it's never a dull moment if you're the mayor of Urbana. And I think we have great people living here. We have real serious problems. We have real poverty here, and we'll be presenting, I hope maybe by the end of the summer I can bring you a community report card about what the issues are and what some of the ways of dealing with them are. in a more formal way than we've talked about them. But I'm on a shared governance committee with Al Kurtz on Head Start, and we just met today, and pulling together some of the information about the value of Head Start. And that was one of the things that we highlighted earlier, was the lack of space for many of the children that are eligible. And I'd like to see all the children in Urbana that are eligible actually be able to get the services, because this is a long-term thing that I know the state legislature is aware of the importance of early childhood education, and I'd like to see the federal government sort of pick up the ball on that, because Head Start got hit by the sequester, and so now there are fewer children that are being served when what we needed to do was expand it. So that's one of the parts of my job, is to try to be in communication with other governments, other mayors, and also the legislature and the Congress.
Other questions for the mayor? I had one very quick one. I echo Diane's comments. That was part of my question before. Similarly, do we have a rough idea of fire schedule, fire chief schedule here? Have you decided hiring within, doing a national search?
We're going to
between?
do a search.
Okay.
People from within are able to apply, but we're also advertising too.
Okay, so we've already started advertising then.
I don't know if the advertising has already started. We've tried to persuade the chief to stay on a little bit longer. We're probably going to have an interim person.
Okay.
But he wanted to, try to help with the transition. So we were talking about you, Bill, while you were gone. Everybody said good things.
Okay. Other questions for the mayor? Okay. Well.
Yes.
I had one more.
Oh, Diane.
Would you be open to issuing another RFP for the Goodyear property?
Sure.
See what kind of ideas are out there now.
I think the first one we didn't. We're not able to really act on that. So I think that's on the list.
Okay.
That CD has.
Dennis.
Just one other topic that came up tonight earlier. There were a lot of questions about the TIF district use and financing, and we've gotten so many benefits from the TIFs in the past, and we are retiring one of the TIF districts. Apparently, hasn't been tracked by the speaker. But when do you want to make any comments about when the TIF 1 starts to become?
I will say that it's a misstatement to claim that we don't keep track of the TIFs and they just drift on and we don't renew them annually. There's no need to renew them annually. They are set up for a certain time period. And we do meet annually with the other taxing districts, and they are happy with the TIFs. So we distribute the money as it becomes available to other taxing bodies. We'll be distributing the one that's going to, come to the end of its life. And what the purpose of a TIF is to increase the value of the property in that district, and we have succeeded in doing that. And that is why our taxing bodies are happy with what Urbana has done. And we get, anything that we're going to do in the TIF gets their approval first. Yes.
The build-out of UC2B seems to be quite dormant. Is there anything that we could do to
we talked to Mike Hosier, and Mike Hosier thought that the News Gazette editorial was very one-sided, and he's going to be writing a guest editorial about all the positive things that have happened. So I think sometimes you'll get somebody that's highly critical that maybe isn't giving credit for what really has been accomplished.
No, I think what's happened is very positive, but I'm concerned about the next stage, the build out from the ring,
well, I mean, it's something that we have to deal with. They've been sort of hung up on the governance, and it's taken a long time. I don't know why it's taken that long, but this whole idea of making it into a not-for-profit. I get an invitation every year from the
Illini Electric Co-op, and I think, well, co-ops work, so maybe that's something I thought we should be doing from the beginning. So we're not done with the governance, and so if this effort seems to be a little bit bogged down, maybe it's time to look at something else that would work better. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And while the mayor's moving up here, we'll get started on the next topic. I think, Kelly, are you leading us on that? Oh, okay. Okay, we're done, so, yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on to social service funding allocations. Kelly, did you get something from everybody yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We did send the spreadsheet out again because there might have been some that may not have received it. And I think the big question is how much funding is there available? As we heard earlier, Cunningham Township said $65,000, add our community development block grant of $5,000, so that's $70,000. And then I guess the question is, what is the city allocation?
So we only spent, was it 285,000? We were supposed to spend over 300,000. So what's the difference in those two numbers? What happened?
I think that there were a couple of agencies that either did not submit their application or they did not receive all their funding, and so then we reallocated to like the 2 summer programs last year.
Okay. Anybody have any suggestions or questions? Diane?
Yes, I have a suggestion, and then I have a request of Chief Connolly. Actually, is he here? Oh, good, he's there. Right. Community Elements, the Time Center grant request is a big one. It's for $49,710, and it includes 2 parts. The one part was for $20,258 for the crisis intervention services that we learned some about a few weeks ago in a study session, and then the other part was for $29,452, and that was for the treatment and recovery efforts at the Time Center. And these are such 2 different items that actually when I went through and did my allocations, I split them out because I thought they should be considered separately. So, and I did give a warning to Eric, but now I need to redo my entire sheet again anyway, so disregard everything I've sent you. But anyway, I think we should try splitting those out. And as I've learned, and I wondered if Chief Connolly could re-explain what this crisis intervention grant that we're being asked to consider is for and how it fits into the big picture, because I learned after that meeting we had a few weeks ago that there's actually more to the puzzle than we were told about. So I'd appreciate just an overview.
The concept of the crisis intervention program was actually dated back a long time ago with a guy by the name of Grant Willis, who actually, when I was a patrolman 22 years ago, would respond to calls by the police department during crisis events. Someone was contemplating suicide and the police were trying to gain entry to the home to help provide services to that person. Grant Willis or someone from Champaign County Mental Health at the time actually responded to the scene, addressed those needs, and then the police department was able to go address other issues. And once they were in a secure environment, typically the hospital, Champaign County Mental Health at that time, would deal with that person from a mental health perspective rather than a criminal perspective. That then, with funding, disappeared, and we then kind of substituted a lot of that with the crisis intervention team officers. Those are specially trained police officers dealing with mental health issues. We already talked about the huge increase in the number of mental health related cases that the police are dealing with. So the concept, the theory was that we try to get community elements back to that response mode. So we started entertaining the notion that maybe with a combination of efforts from CIT officers, they started talking with the mental health folks, with community elements, to see if they might be willing to participate in a program similar to that. Then Provena got involved with the whole concept of the Community Resource Center, where they were dealing with the mental health issues. The jail got involved. Champaign got involved. So all of the law enforcement community started looking in that direction, and that's where the concept of the mental health response team, the crisis team, was discussed when we talked during the closed session a few weeks ago.
So this $20,258 that's being requested funds a half-time social worker?
Correct. That's
Okay.
right.
And-
According to Sheila Ferguson, doing the math from other grants that she was able to secure or petition, she considered Urbana to be a half-time contribution. In the big scheme of things, Champaign was going to be 2 folks. I don't know all of the,
So
the
Champaign
intimate-
is funding a couple of other positions.
Right, but Champaign Police, as I understand it, are looking more toward dealing, their biggest problem, they recognize more so than the mental health issues, is the domestic violence issues that they're dealing with in the northern part of the city. So they wanted to focus their attention on having the mental health, the community elements folks respond in a crisis event, not only to mental health issues, but to primarily domestic violence issues. So they're kind of pooling all of these resources and trying to tackle a number of different problems that these police agencies are facing, with the ultimate purpose of relieving the police of dealing with the social service and going back to the 911 calls for service, that kind of stuff.
Has Champaign put anything in their budget for this?
I don't know.
We were told that they had not.
I don't know if they did or didn't.
So we would need to know that before we commit something, I would think.
So is someone else picking up the other half of the social worker's time?
Well, again, and I don't know how they're breaking up the money, but as I understand it, the sheriff's office is also looking at, although theirs is going to be within the county jail, they're looking at getting more social service, mental health treatment within the county jail. But ours is more preventative prior to going to jail, the concept was, rather than dealing with the offender after they're already in custody.
And this half-time person would work exclusively in Urbana?
I can't say that, no. I think the concept is they pool all the resources, just like CITs. Urbana doesn't just work crisis intervention team officers. If Champaign didn't have any officers, an Urbana officer would go and help them that evening, just like Champaign would come and help us.
Okay.
Who's next? Charlie?
Yeah. My preference on this is to look at this outside of social services. I think, since it's going to be an intergovernmental type program, to me, it should not be part of social services. It should be a standalone piece that we look at funding in an intergovernmental way with the other bodies. This is something we've wanted to do for some time, I think. I know it's this social worker for I've seen this floating around in the police department for at least the last, I think we had this discussion 20-some years ago with one of your predecessors. I mean, the whole issue of making sure that we have appropriate coverage for mental health issues and related outside of a police response. And I'm totally supportive of that. So I really think, we should encourage this in a separate line with Champaign and the sheriff and so on. In other words, and not have it as part of our social service funding.
Well, Eric.
I don't think we have, I think it should be part of our social service funding this year. But, because I think that we don't want it to fall through the cracks altogether. It's really quite important. But yes, but I agree that in the future we ought to look in the direction that you're suggesting.
Bill.
I guess, Kelly, is it okay to divide those? Is it okay to divide that grant into 2 pieces?
I believe it was part of one application. that would, I guess that would be your decision, but it was all included under the Time Center application.
But it's
Eric?
Yeah, if I would make a suggestion, I would suggest maybe that somebody who wants to do that effectively might put a little asterisk next to their dollar and say what their intent is, and then you will have expressed your intent, and then we can figure out what to do with that, if that sounds like a reasonable way to go.
Or we could just vote on it. You know, because you're trying to figure out what the total should be, and we've approached Champaign about sharing on social services. We don't seem like we're getting anywhere, but if they're interested in this, maybe the way to get it done is to separate it out. A thought.
Well, I think we have time to, we have some time to discuss this and figure it out. We need to see what Champaign does with its budget tomorrow night, and we should have our staff talking to their staff about how to do this particular piece of the social service thing. I mean, if it really can be a program an intergovernmental agreement where it stands on its own, and we contribute a halftime FTE, then we should do the halftime FTE.
Okay. Charlie?
A separate thought here, and this comes out of the discussions of the stormwater benefit fee, where the previous council, and I think Brandon brought this up right towards the end of his term, was that we had we had sort of earmarked about $250,000 to reserves and approximately $70,000 to social service funding, with the idea that we'd have some available to help offset programs that would be most impacted by an additional fee. So there's $70,000, based on the original revenues, and I don't know what the actual revenues are for the coming year, but it's probably some subset of that 70, and it strikes me that should be part of our discussion. That could be used as, and should be used as, a way to supplement what I look at as a $265,000 amount that we currently have. And if we had even $300,000 to work with, or $300,000 and this halftime FTE from that additional funds, I would be very in favor of such a move.
I think we have a real problem in that we don't have the revenue in the general fund to take $70,000. I brought that issue up when we were talking about the capital improvement plan. So I think the landscape has really changed since that motion was made. Did you want to say something, Eric?
Oh, I guess I also I was going to pick up on something that you said some time ago, that we really ought to really consider the storm sewer fee kind of inviolate, because otherwise everybody would have reasons not to pay it to be a special case. So I think that I think our social service spending should be just considered completely independent of the storm sewer fee.
If I could respond to that.
Charlie.
Yeah, well, remember the storm sewer fee, we were paying out of the general fund for storm sewer fee expenditures. We expected to be able to keep a portion of that money that we were taking from the general fund into the capital improvement plan as to stay there. That's how we can pay for Windsor Road, for example, a rebuilding project that we probably desperately need. And there's some additional funds there. Granted, we are being hit by, I wish Bill were here I don't know what the exact number is, but you look at the health increases, it's $100,000 for each of the big departments in new health care costs. So, right there's a big hit on the general fund. So I recognize what the mayor's saying. So we probably need to go through and, I guess basically what the mayor is saying is that the $700,000 or $800,000 that we may have been able to save before has been totally eaten up by, is every penny of it basically eaten up by
Well, I mean,
the
Carl
various
took
increases?
away $820,000.
Yeah.
But we had built, I think there were two tracks going here. One was Public Works and one was Finance and Mayor. And Finance and Mayor thought we need the $800,000 in the general corporate fund. And, sometimes when we get new revenue, people think, oh, here's something that we can spend. But the general fund was desperate for money because everything went down. Our sales tax went down, our income tax went down, and then much to our horror, our assessed value went down, which was, we were not expecting that. It had never happened. And now it's happened, and in addition, we've got whacked with another 11% cut by Carl saying that they should be tax exempt. So that's what the problem is.
It's more than that. It's 11% on one hand, and then they're charging us a bigger
Right. Well,
healthcare cost.
I think we're going to
right?
try to deal with the healthcare costs because I don't think there's any way that we can come up with a 15% increase to increase Carl's profits or Health Alliance's profits or whoever. Mike?
Wanted to add that also the stormwater fee isn't going to start, I think, until September 1st, so we're going to miss a couple months in the fiscal year. Also, originally was anticipated, I think, would generate about 1.6, 1.7 million, and then it was discovered that actually it's going to generate more like 1.4 million a year. So we had a couple factors coming in this year.
Charlie?
So I guess I would move that we set the social service funding then at $265,000.
I'd second that.
Oh, the motion was to set social service funding at $265,000. There's, when I went through my worksheet, I sort of reduced the things that were funded by the township, but that, I don't really know why they were funded by the township instead of by the general fund, so that's just the way I did it, but that's a first attempt. So we'll do something and then we'll talk about it, I guess. You guys can put it together and then we'll figure out where we go. But, this is a good start to say $265,000. Anybody else want to comment on that before we vote? Mike?
Well, I would just say that given the department heads coming up here and talking about their budgets and their needs that are unmet, I just, in agreeing with the mayor that public safety ought to be first and foremost, until we've figured out how to fund them, I can't support any of this.
Okay.
Not saying that any of these, and frankly, my small business contributes to several of the charities on the list.
Do you want
And
a
I
property
wish-
tax exemption?
That would be very nice, but I'll take a pass on that. Right, but no, I'm not trying to denigrate the efforts of anybody here to fund any of these things. I'm just saying that we need to meet public safety needs, public works needs first, and until we know that we've done that, I can't, in good conscience, support this.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Dennis, did you want to say something?
Well, I'm just thinking that we know that our public services are important to the community, and we also know that this town has done a lot to ensure public safety. And so I don't think that we're at a crisis point. If public safety was imperiled, I could probably agree with Mike's comments, but I think we're in pretty good shape. We're pretty stable, so funding social services contributes to the health of the community in other kinds of ways that are really important. So I'm happy to go with the $265,000 if that's the cap that we agree with. We can start with that.
I'll fill in my sheet for $265,000.
Okay, I'll add 15,000 to mine. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
That motion carries. Oh, we have one opposition that should be noted, which I understand. Okay, there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.